For the recording real quick, my position is just going to be that Gear 5 Luffy most likely wins the battle against Kaido. Now, just to be clear real quick, the 5 judges that we have are Shinra, Yanni, Rizhan, Kuro, and Oshi. So, would you like to name your position, and I can just give an argument real quick, or a little
Yeah,
opening?
I just think that Kaido would more likely to be the winner of the fight against Luffy.
Okay, so as an opening real quick, look, I just think they give a description of his devil fruit, and which seems to be something that allows him to win most battles that he would be within due to a subjective reality. So it's the case that there are responses that
Jesus
people
Christ.
typically give, such as, hold on, the responses that people typically give, such as, well, there's instances where he didn't use it, even though it's reasonable to use it within an instance. Well, I guess things like that could be refuted by plot-induced stupidity or some inconsistency that is a seeming rather than an actual inconsistency when it comes to the character. Another thing is people misinterpreted situations, so it may not even be plot-induced stupidity which is arising within that specific circumstance, but rather just a misinterpretation. So, would you like me to send the scans for a subjective reality?
Sure, go ahead. Send the scans for his subjective reality and also the context in which, you precogged my counter response, right? So send the context and we can go over that and then determine whether or not it's plot induced stupidity, or also on top of that, whether these things that you would attribute to be like some sort of win con would be within Luffy's character to do.
Okay, so one, we know that Luffy wants to win, so that's the justification. It's a prioritized justification as to why it would be in his character for him to conceive of a win. We know that he imagines winning against everybody that he fights. So that's one thing out of the way. Two, I don't know what context you're asking for, so I'm just gonna deem that to be irrelevant until you're specifying a specific instance, because what I was quote unquote precogging is the prior arguments that I've seen against my point. So it's the case that I'm saying if you were to bring up some counterfactual evidence, quote unquote counterfactual evidence, I would just either reply to it by saying you're misinterpreting what's going on within the specific situation, or two, it's the case that plot-induced stupidity is applied. So whenever you ask me to give some context, I'm not sure what context you want because we're not talking about a specific instance. But can someone please send the scan in which talks about a subjective reality?
Okay. Well, just to immediately respond to that, uh, it doesn't even have to be like just because it's like some he has the intent to kill doesn't mean it wouldn't be within his character to use these subjective reality things. He wants to kill, like he has the intent to kill Kaido. However, he does not just like win by like conceiving that Kaido dies or things like these. Rather, he would use his imagination. Even if I were to grant this Steelman this, and we were to agree some level of subjective reality. Uh, Irregardless, it would just be the case that he doesn't really like use the like it seems to be some sort of limitations within his character, at least, that he doesn't use it to kill Kaido immediately or just like do whatever he wants. uh Clearly he has goals when he's using Gear 5, for example, against Kizaru. uh he wants to stop Kizaru from killing Vegapunk, yet Kizaru still kills Vegapunk. So there seems to be like, if not limitations, it would then follow that it's just not within his character, and if not within his character, then last resort it would just be plot induced stupidity. So it's just three walls of defense I'm using here.
One, plot-induced stupidity is something that helps me, not you. That's for seemingly contradictory points, not actual contradictions. So that's to dismiss to that point. Two, that's not what a stillman is. Three, it's the case that whenever you say it's limitations to his character, I can grant that subjective reality does have a limitation, which is obviously going to be the imagination or the conceivability of the person in mind, specifically Luffy. Fourth is the case that whenever you talk about him having the intent to kill does not imply that subjective reality would be used. I think you kind of misworded what you were talking about there. Let me just clarify. The intent is going to be typically a part of your conceivability. So if you intend for something to be the case, you usually have some fictional depiction of it within your mind, and then you would model your performance off of that fictional depiction. Like, for example, if I want to go to the store, I typically imagine me going to the store through a course of actions, and then I actually model my performance off of that sequence of actions in which is in mind. So it's the case that off of intent, we can model our performances, and the model of our performances is all we need when it comes to the evidential justification that I have. It's called performative justification. Now, just to clarify real quick, whenever you say that he has the desire, he has these specific goals, but it's not immediately something in which is actualized, the way in which he actualizes them within the battle, or the goals that he has within the battle, may not be specifically to win. So it's the case that he has the ultimate goal to win, but that's not what he's conceiving of within the instance. He's conceiving of things in which would lead him to the victory. So within the specific matches that you're talking about, like for example, Kaido, it can be the
Yeah, let
case
me see,
that
little bro.
he. Anyways, I'm sorry. Can we please mute that group? Hold on. Anyways,
Affinity, you fucking trash, my nigga. Stop talking.
bro, chill, bro. Anyways, so finish what I was saying. Within a specific matches, like for example, Kaido, it's the case that he may have goals in which lead up to a victory ultimately, but he may not have conceived of the concept of a victory within that specific instance. Now, against Kizaru or whatever his name is, it's the case that he may just be stalling, the same as both of them have some cognitive dissonance towards the goal in mind. So one is to protect Vegapunk, which may be easier if it's the case that they stalled in comparison to if they both went all out, if Luffy went all out, and in response, Kizaru went all out, which may cause something which is made difficult, while rather stalling is just going to allow him to wait. We know this. It's a case that they both are weakened, they're both nerfed, so I don't think that really responds to anything. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't see how
Westbound.
being nerfed is trouble show. I don't see how being nerfed is relevant in the instance of Kizaru. Uh, it's just going to follow that he still has conceivability, yet it just fails. Uh, you're taking it to this like ultimate utmost extent. Regardless, the fact that you say that he wants to win, yet he can't conceive of his winning, that seems to be like some sort of internal contradiction there. Uh, the performative justification, like I see what you mean. You're saying, oh yeah, I would go to the supermarket, but then I would walk out these steps of actually going to the supermarket. So yeah, like he would want to fight Kaido, he would want to beat Kaido, but then he just acts out these steps in order to beat Kaido. So it seems within his character, like even if we were to grant this thing and we like ignore the limitations, and by the way, you haven't substantiated anything you said. I've still asked for these scans, you haven't provided them yet. uh
Okay.
even yeah, even if we just like disregard these limitations entirely, uh and by the way, like we can drop plot induced stupidity. Like I know what you mean, like it helps you, it doesn't help me. uh
Okay. Okay.
Kaido
So
in this
one.
instance, hold on, wait. Kaido in this instance has still put like has still in a sense defeated Gear 5 Luffy. He knocked Luffy out of Gear 5 multiple times. So if Gear 5 at this point wanted to beat Kaido, yet he just like took some steps for conceivability, yet he failed in doing so. So like the methodology gets stopped at some point, then it would just follow that he more likely than not wouldn't be able to do this thing, or it would just be another limitation that I'm imposing on Luffy in this instance.
Okay, one, whenever you say I didn't give any evidence towards my claim, he's specifically talking about Luffy's conceivability or subjective reality. So let's just to clarify that for the recording, I gave a priori
Both, both,
justification
both,
for
both,
most of the
both.
things. Hold on, can I please finish? I
Sorry.
don't care about the both. I'm going to dismiss that for now because I did give a priori justification. You saying that I didn't give any evidence without responding to the evidence that I did give doesn't mean I didn't give any evidence. So that's one. Two, it's the case that whenever you're within a battle, you're going to exhaust all your features when you're ultimately, for example, getting pushed back, you're going to exhaust all your features to the point where they can no longer be effective. If it's the case that you apply one of your features out of two and it's not effective, you're most likely going to apply your second feature. Within the instance of Kaido, the entire point is that I never said or made the claim that he immediately wants to win. So it's the case that against Kaido, due to this being something of which he just achieved, it may be the case that he's just having fun within the battle at first, which is why he does succeed in having fun, and it follows that he can be knocked out of Gear 5, which just is not incompatible with his goal. Him being knocked out of Gear 5 and then coming back to Gear 5 directly after does not at all create some incompatibility between the goal of having fun within the battle and then obviously having limitations to a subjective reality, because that would presuppose that the goal within that specific instance is to win, rather than ultimately all of the desires that he has or possesses leading to something of which is a victory at the end of the day, which he did get. So that's the entire point of that. And then, yes, you agree with the plot induced stability point. And then whenever you say that the goal of increasing, I apologize. Whenever you say that it's irrelevant whether or not there's a nerf between Kizaru and Luffy, the entire point is that within that situation, if it's the case that Luffy does not desire to kill Kizaru, but rather he just wants to stall, which we know he wants to stall, so Kizaru does not ultimately, meaning he doesn't have to go in the mind, but ultimately does not go and kill Vegapunk when I want you to show him killing Vegapunk. And two, it's the case that if his goal is just to stall, he did stall, it is successful, he did stall because he stalled. The entire point is he stalled because all stalling is impeding the progression of some events. It's the case that he impeded the progression of the sequence of killing that specific person. Even if it's the case that he did kill that person ultimately, the entire point is analytically he did succeed in terms of stalling, which was his goal seemingly at the point. So far it's the case that we know establishedly, at least, or we know that what's established is that it's his goal to stall in comparison to his goal being to kill Kizaru. I'm not sure if I grant that. And the entire point is that if Kizaru is nerfed and Luffy, or I apologize, if Kizaru is holding back and Luffy is holding back, then Luffy increasing his strength may cause a response from Kizaru to increase his strength as well, which may make the battle difficult when it comes to the goal of stalling specifically rather than killing Kizaru, which is why the reason as to why they're both holding back, or in other words, nerfed, is something in which is relevant. But can someone please send the scans, my nigga?
Yeah, okay. Like
I
what I
wasn't.
Fucked up
said
I
scan.
was
was. I
okay.
wasn't done.
Like you heard what I meant by
I
both.
wasn't. But I wasn't done.
Oh, my bad. I thought.
Yeah.
Can we
So
get a
when I
timer?
never. Yeah.
Time.
I never. Huh? Okay, I never said that he can't conceive of a win. I said within that instance, there's no evidence as to why he's specifically conceiving of a win, rather than testing out the new ability that he had, which he was having fun with, which is seemingly evidenced, intuitively speaking, by the laughter. He gets stronger as he laughs, which seemingly doesn't even mean anything because there's no interpretation relative to that. Like, for example, he can't get stronger with strength. We know he physically doesn't get stronger with the laughter. So what is it
Can
talking about?
someone mute him? It's been 2 minutes and a half.
I mean, Fendi, are you done
Like
for the point?
Zoff, you gotta wake up, bro.
I think he's
No,
muted.
I wasn't done. I didn't even get to explain the scans that he wanted me to
It's
give.
two
But
minutes and a half.
it's
You have
fine.
two
It's
minutes
fine.
to
You can go.
talk.
I know, bro. I know. Go. Go ahead.
All right, bro. Like Zoff, you gotta wake up, bro. Anyway, uh,
Westbound. Wait, let's make something clear. If they didn't finish their point, should we just extend
no,
it till they're
it's
done,
two
or should we
minutes,
just
bro.
cut it
You have
off?
2 minutes to
It's
talk.
two
Yeah, just
minutes. You can cut me off, but cut me off verbally.
yeah.
Okay.
I will. Don't worry. Anyway.
Well, not you, him.
Oh well, yeah. Zoff's just not paying attention at all. Uh, Zoff, please like focus. So yeah, you're gonna exhaust all your features. Um, I don't mind if he exhausted all of his features while having this goal. He doesn't want to he doesn't want to immediately win. That's like fine. Again, that just goes back to the supermarket analogy that we had prior. Uh, but that's still not even like this exclusive thing to him like wanting to win. So like he wants to have fun, but he also wants to win. He wants to try out this new ability. Luffy's gonna start using his Gear 5 and his imagination, and he wants to fight him, right? So these two things can still be included within one like entire goal. Just the fact that he's not able to enact these goals within one instance of Gear 5 seems to be some sort of like not contradiction, but like it seems to be some sort of limitation at that point. So it you're saying, oh yeah, he has this reality manipulation, but within one instance of this ability being used, he can only really enact sort of one feature. Or if you're trying to make the argument that he's not trying to win here, it doesn't make much sense. Clearly, Luffy's trying to win. He's trying to beat Kaido. That's the goal of this entire fight to defeat to save not Onigashima, Wano, right? You're also not responding to compartmentalization in that instance. Uh, it would just be the it would just be the case. Hold on, wait. It would just be the case that yeah, I understand what you're saying about Luffy in one instance and the other. Like he can still enact that, I guess, vision of Gear 5 within the second instance to, I guess, continue it. But the fact of the matter is, right? When he's using Gear 5, he wants to have this end goal. If let me put it for you this way, let's go back to the supermarket analogy with the. I guess the what you call it? You called it the performative justification. Yes, that supermarket analogy. I write a plan, or it's like projection sourcing. I write a plan. I want to go to the store. I follow the steps to going to the store. After go to the store, um, or let's say somebody stops the road to getting to my store, and then after I try and like get to the store. If like my ability is to just go to the store, and within my instance of me
Yo, it's
going to
been
the
two
store,
minutes, Westbound.
I'm able to
Uh,
enact
I
the
It's been two
mute him.
vision.
I
minutes.
mute him. I mute him. So one, one. Whenever you say it's yeah. So whenever you say he lost these battles and he went out to Gear 5, that can be a stamina issue, independent of his goal or desire to imagine still having stamina or more stamina, which we know that he is capable of granting himself more stamina, granted the revival that he had. Two, whenever you say that it's a conjunction of him wanting to have fun and also wanting to win, I don't grant that within the instance where he first achieved Gear 5, there was a conjunction between wanting to have fun and wanting to win because seemingly he exists within this euphoric state. Another thing is whenever you say that these I apologize. Another thing is when you add these two things, which is going to create the conjunct, that obviously implies asymmetrical complexity, which I'm not going to grant within the instance, which obviously makes your point less ontologically parsimonious. Now, a response to the other point is you already dropped the plot induced stupidity point, which already encapsulates the points that we're talking about currently or the arguments we're talking about currently. Another response is to the fact that he has a reality manipulation being invoked. Everybody has reality manipulation. Everybody's able to manipulate some fact of reality or some state of affairs of reality. We're talking about what level. Another thing is trying to win and actually conceiving of winning are two different things. I said that people typically, when they have intent, lead into having some conceivable notion relative to their consent, but that's or relative to their intent. But that's typically speaking. So if in this instance, if it's the case that ultimately he's performing actions which leads up to the victory, that does not mean that he conceives of a victory, but rather if it's the case that him having fun is within specific sequences, ultimately meaning indirectly beating Kaido, then it's the case that although he's not conceiving of a victory, it still follows that he can get a victory from these indirect actions. And finally speaking, whenever you sat in response to the one instance, two instance, compartment, whatever how you pronounce it, the compartment shit, that's the point of contention, whether or not that actually follows to what we're talking about. It seems to be the case that abductively and inductively, everything that we've seen prior accurately matches up when it comes to the
All right,
devil
it's
fruit
been 2 minutes.
descriptions. Okay, good. I sent the scan, by the way.
Okay. Just reading the scan, I don't see anything that like implies that he's like has this subjective imagination reality manipulation. As you said prior, you said that everyone has like some form of reality manipulation. We all interact with reality in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, like that's fine. Basically, if it would just follow that before Luffy imagined like having like an insane amount of fun fighting Kaido, him getting like this silly ability would be able to turn his imagination into reality. That would just be like some equal interpretation being made there. I need to justify why it's more ontologically parsimonious. Uh, Prove revival. You made the claim, oh, because of his revival, I need some sort of evidence for that. I heard you try and sneak that in there. It's not going to work. And then I already gave an argument for why he wants to win. You'd be very hard pressed to prove that in this instance, the euphoria would override any sense of like him wanting to win. And then just to go back prior before I stop this, you asked for proof that he killed Vegapunk. Can somebody drop the scan that Kizaru killed Vegapunk? Uh, and the way to remedy this was just like ultimately and to set these realistic expectations or limitations of this ability in accordance to my interpretation. He would want to save Vegapunk, obviously, because that's the point of him stalling. If he wasn't able to save Vegapunk through like some other means, or if he was able to do these things, it would be more narratively coherent that he wouldn't. Right now, your claim is just entirely less parsimonious. In that instance, you're applying more restrictions upon this thing that you were generalizing, right? Oh, somebody sent the scan for. There we go. Thank you, Calamity. He just goes out and kills Vegapunk. That's me fulfilling my burden of proof there, right? Again, you're on the affirmative here. You'd have to prove more likely than not all these things. I don't see how any of this is much of a response. And on top of that,
All right, it's been 2 minutes.
okay.
On mute Infinity.
One, I'm on the affirmative for some points, not all points. Nice trying to sneak that in. Two is the case whenever they mention this ability, although it's the case that everybody has subjective reality. All right, but just not subjective reality. Reality manipulation, subjective reality and reality manipulation are two different things. And the way that you're doing it are two different methods. So it's the case that whenever they highlight him having subjective reality, it's obviously going to be independent of what's basic or what's conventional because there would be no reason to mention it otherwise. Inductively, it's the case that whenever they give a description of the devil fruit, it seems to accurately depict what the devil fruit is capable of doing within reality. Whenever you say you want me to justify that your point is less ontologically parsimonious, it's the case that with your point to be true, it has to be a conjunct rather than my just one point rather than just my atomic sentence. It's the case that you have to have a compound sentence because there's two things. There's a logical connective and there. So it's the case that you're saying Y and B is the case in comparison to my atomic proposition, which only has one subject. Anyways, whenever you say because of his revival, please send a revival thing. Whenever you say because he wants to win, the entire point is whether or not he wants to win within the instance. What you gave justification for is him wanting to win overall, which is completely fine. But whether or not he's in this state of euphoria, which is a basis to question whether or not it follows that he wants to win within
Yeah,
that
let's go,
specific
Infinity.
instance.
Let's go,
Bro,
Infinity. You got this.
yo, bro, no, I ain't gonna lie. The timer shit, no, nigga, that does not count, my nigga. Like, this nigga's dead ass interrupting. Anyways, to finish what I was saying, whenever you talk about me needing to prove that the euphoria is something which overrides him wanting to win, the entire point is that I'm questioning whether or not he wants to win for those specific instances. And my euphoria point is a basis to put these things into question. That's my reasonable basis. So I'm not making a claim that the euphoria overrides whatever we're talking about. I don't need to justify that it overrides whatever we're talking about. The entire point is as long as I have this basis to question what you're talking about within a specific instance, what you're on the affirmative for, you need to justify that point. Now, in response to the other thing, the entire point is whether or not these desires are something of which he possesses. So although he can perform actions which ultimately actualizes some goal in mind, even if it's not in mind, some random goal or some goal that exists, it's the case that the actions may not be something of which he conceives of, or it's the case that desire may not be something of which he conceives of. Within the battle that we're talking about, the hypothetical battle, it's the case that he has killing intent,
All
meaning
right,
he
time's
is
up.
most likely. What do you mean time's up? Nigga interrupted for like 15
He
seconds.
talked for like 2 seconds. Okay,
Bro,
Infinity,
and
you
I
get two
stopped
more
for like
seconds.
50,
Finish
bro,
your
bro,
last thing.
okay, bro, chill. Okay, whenever you say that my point is less ontologically parsimonious, I want you to justify that. There has to be asymmetrical complexity between the 2 points for it to be less ontologically parsimonious. I want you to justify that there exists asymmetrical complexity. Like, the
All
fuck?
right, can you mute him now? He
Yeah,
finished his
I
point.
got you.
All right. So basically, you put some burdens on me. The rival thing, you claimed it. Like, I don't know why you're trying to flip this on me. um, I already gave the argument for him like having the goal of doing these things. So what we're doing here is like we're remedying the fact that he can have multiple goals during the fight. All this is just us adding a list of things that he wants to do, and we're accounting for all the data. You're omitting evidence to try and make what you're saying more likely or what you think is more likely, right? It's not very smart. On top of that, it would just follow that. Hold on, here we go. Let me look for it. Yeah, so I'm not like making this difference between subjective reality manipulation or like reality manipulating reality in some way, shape, or form. Uh, well, I guess I am, but that's not what I'm like indexing this to. I'm talking about yes, within this scan, both can be true. You don't really have anything that supports the fact that what yours or what you think the scan means is true. Like obviously what people say or what the data books say about the scans, what the data books say about the fruits can be some true thing. I don't really care for that. Uh, However, I'm not disagreeing with its truth tracking ability. What I'm disagreeing with is whether or not it's saying exactly what you're saying. I don't really care for like saying that he can like turn imagination into reality, whatever he's like imagining. He can like have these really silly imaginations, and they can be like limited, right? But
All
I
right, time's
one
up. Let me unmute him. All
Okay,
right.
justify that the limited to your hedging, the original claim that you made is that it is the case that he possesses both of these desires or both of these goals or both of these conceivable notions, meaning that now that you're hedging by saying that it's just possible, I want you to grant one that is narratively possible, justifies narratively possible, and two, I explain why that would be less ontologically parsimonious because two possibilities via the principle of difference is going to be something on which obviously has asymmetrical complexity between the two interpretations that we're both granting within an instance. Now, whenever you say that he wants to desire, you thought in this. Whenever you say that he has a desire to save Vagabond, however he fails, ultimately speaking, is it the case that he possesses a desire or he possesses the desire in mind whenever he's in gear five? Or is it the case that before he goes into gear five, he has that desire? When he goes into gear five, he just has the desire of stalling the battle. He succeeds in stalling the battle, which is simply impeding the progression of some sequence. And it's the case that after he loses stamina and doesn't wish for it back, at least within a specific moment, he loses gear five and then the desire comes back or does not exist after that. Now, in response to everything else you said, nothing you said actually accounts for the data efficiently. All you're doing is asserting random possibilities that you can't justify. Equal interpretation does not exist. And when it comes to the scan, by the way, it says the ability to turn imagination to reality. So that obviously is going to be something which is likely talking about his conceivability to actuality. It's going from potency or it's going from the mind to potency to reality. This is something which is likely given addiction. Whenever you spam a random possibility, there's nothing in which is supported by the diction as much as my point. And also, can y'all send the other scans for his ability to turn imagination into reality, my nigga? They're usually very clear when it comes to the devil fruit descriptions. I don't know where the fuck you're writing. It literally says, reach the peak when he blah blah blah. His form, his death match with the mighty Kaido. And then there's
All
another
right.
statement that also collaborates with this, talking about his ability to turn imagination into reality. And it says something else, but then tells the same thing when it comes to semantical domains. Therefore, like I said, it's also semantically more parsimonious that what I'm talking about is true. So seemingly everything that you're talking about currently is not expected under the given hypothesis which exists towards the explanation of the scans. You're just saying random shit because you're ratting. What the fuck? Nigger?
Yo, Infinity was cool with that one last one.
am I
So
unmuted?
you can go. Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay.
You can go.
I don't see how there's like some sort of asymmetrical whatever you said that's not being accounted for here, right? Obviously, I'm trying my best to not trying my best. I'm accounting for all the data present here. Uh, I'm bringing up all of these different standards. So one, hold on, let me get my notes. You make the presupposition that Gear 5 just changes his desire goals. You'd be hard pressed to prove that. Like again, when you were responding to that thing that I quote unquote didn't track, right? Uh, I'm not even like you can say that equal interpretations don't exist. Like it's not like some big deal. I'm just interpreting the scan as something else. It's still in line with the diction. It can go from mind to reality without being subjective reality manipulation. He thinks of something and then he enacts this thing. I think I'm gonna punch this person. I can do this thing. But if I just want to do these more like I guess ridiculous or out of very unconventional things, then that would be some mind to reality thing without being subjective reality manipulation. He can turn the wall into like the ground into rubber. These are things that seem unconceivable, yet he can do them. Like regardless, on top of all of that, I've been asking this for like 5, 10, my last 3 turns. Can someone just get the scans where he doesn't want Vegapunk to die? So that I can like properly contextualize this. Can you pause my time so I can get the scan and explain this, please?
I mean, your time's almost over, so we can just like wait till your next time is. Because I'm pretty sure someone will get it
What?
to you by then.
I still have to contextualize it. I still have
I
time.
know, but you have 1 more minute left. So if you
Oh,
can get it
one more
within
minute.
1 minute,
That's half of the time.
Wait, what scan are you
well,
looking
now the
for?
time's over.
Scan?
Okay, well,
Let me get-
pause it at 1 minute and then give me a minute.
No,
What's
no,
wrong
no,
with
no,
you?
no, 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 no. I did not get a pause whenever I was getting my skin, my nigga. I literally
Yeah,
gave you
Wes. The
a
only
minute
reason I'm not gonna pause is because
By the
Infinity
way,
didn't
this
get
time
pause
when you're
either.
talking currently does not count. I'm going to start. Okay, are you done? Are you done? Is the timer starting? When is the timer starting? Right
No,
now?
start now. Start now. No.
Yeah,
Go, go, go.
whenever you say you don't see the asymmetrical complexity, I don't grant you seeing it or not is something in which is relevant. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to convince the judges. One is something in which is obviously smaller than two. Whenever we talk about ontological simplicity, we're talking about the number of entities it has in comparison to some ontologically complex being. Now, secondly, whenever you talk about your hypotheses being something which accounts for all the data, even if I were to grant that, which I don't, just because it accounts for all the data doesn't mean that it's less ontologically parsimonious. Dumbass. My bad for calling you a dumbass. I'm sorry. It's a case that it can be more complex due to the number of assumptions it has, unwarranted speaking, or the number of entities it has. However, it's still able to account for all the data. So if you have hypothesis one, hypothesis two, although hypothesis one and hypothesis two both accounts for the explanation or the data or the situation that we're talking about, it's the case that one is more asymmetrically complex because of the number of unwarranted assumptions it has. That's not what ontologically parsimony is talking about. It's not talking about the nature or the quality, or I apologize, the qualifications that it has when it comes to hypothesis, but rather it's talking about the quantity, typically speaking. So it's not talking about the quality of the explanation or the parsimonious point. Is talking about the quantity. Now, in response to everything else, I never said that equal interpretations don't exist. You have to track that. Causation and correlation are two different things. So it's the case that whenever they talk about subjective reality, that wouldn't be subjective reality because it's the case that it would just be some correlation. You have some conceivable notion, and then off that conceivable notion, you model your performance, in which would still be subject to your physical limitations. While subjective reality is talking about reality subject to the mind. Within that instance, it would be subject to the mind, would be subject to your physical limitations, which is produced by naturalistic laws. That's just subjective reality is talking about causation, not correlation. Within the instance that you gave, the example you gave, that's correlation, not causation, my nigga. And then also for the revival point, can someone please send a revival? So can someone please send all the imagination scans that y'all can send or that I was using? And then also, I'm the one who said that the principle of indifference is something which is valid,
All
meaning
right.
that whenever you make the
Time is
claim
up.
that I never granted equal interpretations, it's the case.
I'll mute you, Westy. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, we can see within Gear 5 he still holds his desire. It presents with a scan. Where are you going, Vegapunk? Don't go into the open, he'll kill you. Just to respond to your parsimony point, I'm asking you what are these quantitatively less things that I guess your interpretation holds. I already explained how mine accounts for the evidence better. And also, I would even like have to argue against like some sort of complexity thing. I know you made the distinction between quantity and quality. The quantity that I'm like talking about here is yeah, you're jumping through all of these mental hoops in order to, or I guess logical hoops in order to remedy or make it coherent. That Luffy's able to just do these things without much of a limit, seemingly, right? Well, like for example, with the Vegapunk thing, right? He would stop his desires, or he would have these overriding desires, or clearly, when narratively he wants to enact these things, like he wants to free Onigashima. He wants to and he wants to enact his desires. He just doesn't do it within Gear 5. This just seems to be a very glaring flaw. And if anything, like even if we grant all of this, at the absolute worst, all we can say here is that is just some sort of character thing where again I didn't agree to add a character. We're talking about in a character. So if it's just like within his character, just to not enact his desires, or just to like maybe not even have these desires, like but that's something else entirely. If it's not within his character, if it's not within his character to do this thing, then it would just follow that he probably wouldn't do it. Next, yes, it can go to mind again. Like this is me saying, it can go from mind to reality without being this thing. I want you to like completely repeat what you said about the naturalistic laws. I don't see the relevance to that there in that instance.
Oh,
The
all
way I
right.
would
Time's up.
perceive this.
Let me unmute Infinity. Jesus Christ.
You don't see the relevance because you didn't track it. So whenever you say that you want me to repeat it, I'm not going to repeat it. Now, if you just ask me to repeat it, I will. But now you're saying that you don't see the relevance. That's obviously because you didn't track it, my nigga. So I'll repeat it when it's my turn to conclude, but we're not talking about that currently. Secondly, I don't have to justify that there was a shift in conceivability notions or conceivable notions when it comes to his base state to his gear 5 state, because I'm not saying that the reason why there's a shift in conceivable notions is because of his shift in transformation. We obviously have desires, goals, and conceivable notions which overrides our thought process all the time. So it's the case that at one point we can have some desire X, and then we can forget that desire X because we're talking about his ability to bring his conceivability into reality, meaning that it's co-temporarily the case. If he has a desire within his mind or some conceivable notion, he's able to
Alexa,
actualize.
what's the temperature?
Bro, mute this nigga, bro. Like, why is it always when I'm talking? It's the case that he has some conceivable notion within his mind and that he actualizes the conceivable notion. However, that's co-temporarily. If it's the case that in terms of the desire existing, so if it's the case that at one point he has a desire or a conceivable notion, then at another point he doesn't, then obviously Gear 5 is not going to actualize that other point because at that other point it didn't exist. So what you have to justify is that at the point in which he was Gear 5, he was thinking of, as in it was in his mind to save Vegapunk rather than Sauling. The scan that you said does not justify that as a Gear 5 person within his mind, just speaking about it, within his mind is not the same. Within his mind, it's the case that he has this notion. Whatever, when it comes to the ontological parsimonious point, we're talking about quantity, not quality. So although, even if I were to grant hypothetically, which I don't, you have to justify that, even if I were to grant hypothetically that your hypothesis is something which is able to account for all the data and explain all the data, that is still more complex because of its ontological quantity, its ontological amount of features, not because of its account of data, not because of its level of explanation qualitatively, but rather quantitatively. It's the case that if both hypotheses are able to account for all the data, we're going to look at the one in which is less unwarranted assumptions or has less unwarranted assumptions, which is why I assert the principle of indifference. Whenever you say I'm going through these mental hoops, there's no justification for that. It's the case that whenever you say I'm emitting evidence for a reasonable, I apologize, I'm emitting evidence for a reasonable possibility. I'm not
All
giving
right,
any
time's up.
subjective likelihood, and I never say equal interpretation.
Let me just mute West. All right, West, you can go.
Okay. Again, now we're just running in circles. We can conclude after this. I'm not even saying that yours is like. I'm not even saying that mine has like some sort of more complex, or you're saying that mine has more some sort of complexity. That yours doesn't have like ontologically. I already proved why yours has this. I guess epistemic or whatever. Yours leaps through these more logical bounds. I already gave this argument. You just repeated the fact that you think yours. One, like even if it doesn't account for the data, that it would also just be less personal, or it would also just be less assumptions, quantitatively speaking, and it flows a lot more coherently. I already explained why it doesn't flow more coherently. But if you have an actual argument for why it does, we can go ahead and delve into that. However, we can see within the scans itself, like this is the last time I'm going to repeat it. It's literally Gear 5 Luffy, talking about a thing in relation to his desires that we've seen previously. You haven't given any sort of argument against the conject thing. We can probably just move on from this. You also didn't track the stupidity thing, uh, and what's in line with what he wants to do. And what you said earlier about the against the him wanting to enact his thoughts or enact his desires, and how it would have to be this chronological thing, and how it would take place over some set time. Uh, Again, you didn't really give an argument for that. I already set it in stone. If you have the ability to do this like from the beginning, and then you just get interrupted, then it would just be something that you wouldn't be able to do, even if you like do it after. So that you just don't defeat the compartmentalization of Gear 5 within these two instances. He powers down, then he powers back up. And that's pretty much all. Like, I'm gonna be honest, we can move on soon. Like, this
All
isn't
right,
really getting
I'm
anywhere.
gonna mute him.
So no, I'm not going to move on. Mute him, please. So whenever it comes to the epistemic concrete ideas you're talking about, I need you to justify that those are relevant. You keep on saying it, but you haven't given any actual justification. What type of logic are you using, by the way? Because you're saying I'm making these logical jumps, but you don't know anything about logic. Secondly speaking, I need justification for the claims that you're making. You're just asserting random possibilities, which one I don't even grant whether or not they're narratively possible. And two, it's the case that I need a reasonable burden for you requesting. I apologize. I need a reasonable basis for you requesting burdens. It's the case that you can't just be skeptic and rap all the time. Yes, I need a reasonable basis to justify certain things, even though I already gave justification for every single claim I made. And I also want you to specify what you want me to justify exactly. Now, whenever you talk about the mind to reality thing will be irrelevant, just to clarify, it's causation versus correlation. I'm going to talk about that with my conclusions because I already gave the point. You didn't respond to me at all saying that conceivable notions are contemporary. It means that at one instance, we can have some conceivable notion, and then that conceivable notion can be erased or disqualified because it's overtook by another desire or another conceivable notion. Does that mean that ultimately all your actions don't lead into that conceivable notion later on? No. Does that mean that you can't give that conceivable notion back? No. It's just the case that we're talking about what you're thinking of at the moment. That's what I believe that subjective reality is talking about. Someone sent a scan which talks about in common they're supposedly only limited by their imagination. That is correlated to the causation correlation point. If it's the case that they're only limited by their imagination, while if it's just talking about the correlation point that I talked about in terms of its explanation, it's the case that they wouldn't just be limited by their imagination, meaning that it's most likely talking about the causation point that I gave, which I'm going to clarify within my conclusions because you talked about it not being relevant. And then also your hypothesis accounting for all the data I'm trying to explain is something of which is not the difference. We're not talking about that type of symmetry when it comes to ontological parsimony, typically speaking. We're not talking about its nature, or in other words, its quality. That would be some ideological parsimonious point or some semantical parsimonious point, given what we're talking about, or given the context. But that's not what we're talking about. There's no reason as to why your point is more ontologically parsimonious. You tried to say that it was, and then I'm the one who bring up the principle of indifference, in which you've yet to respond. And the plot induced stupidity point you failed to respond to. Can someone please send a revival? Or they already did. So yes, they showed his revival.
But the time is up. I unmute Westbound now. Westbound, you're unmuted.
Yeah, one, I'd like to ask for some justification for principle of indifference and what you're applying it to. The logical loops I bring up are very relevant, insofar as you're working your way around the pieces of evidence that we see. You don't really account for the data as much, and I understand what you said. Oh yeah, I'm talking about two different things. But yeah, regardless, if you don't account for the evidence, or if there's not equal explanatory power within our interpretations, yours just having maybe quote unquote less unwarranted assumptions, which they don't. I'd like for you to give the argument for why yours has less unwarranted assumptions. I already explained how you made a lot of changes slash hedges to your initial claim in order to remedy the fact that I bring up these very obvious limitations that would just apply here. Uh, Again, the basis for my scans are just contained within the or not the basis for my scans. The basis for my skepticism or any sort of skepticism that I'm bringing are literally not only one, denotatively justified. We use the same definition, and then it's also two, shown within the scans, that so we can properly contextualize our ideas as to why we think these certain things about these scans, like what they mean, what our interpretations are including, more holistically speaking. And then the causation versus correlation point in reference to somebody enacting their desires. Again, yeah, sure, there is this correlation. However, like I gave the argument for the causation. When you want to do this thing, there are going to be these steps that you take. You say that they're cotemporal. I'd like for you to give me like what exactly you mean by cotemporal in that instance. And that's pretty much it.
All right, I'm gonna put you on mute. I'll mute him.
Well, cotemporal means that it's happening simultaneously with some other given situation or some other given event. So, if in this instance, it would be the desire being something in which you possess, the same as the performance. So, it's the case that you're performing something in which is, for example, stalling a battle, and you hold a desire to stall the battle. So, the desire, or in other words, the conceivable notion, is contemporary with the event, in which is obviously taking up you stalling. Secondly, whenever you say that the basis for your skepticism is going to be the denotative justification, I don't grant that that's an actual basis for skepticism, especially since I'm not sure if we have the same definition within a specific instance, because you're trying to give a limitation which is independent of the limitation I'm giving when it comes to my analytical criteria. Another thing is whenever you say that within your scans, or I apologize, the context of the scan is also going to be your basis, well, the context of the scan, how you're interpreting that is going to be a point of contention. So whether or not that's an actual basis is going to need some actual argument. Whenever you want me to justify the principle of indifference, I don't think you know what that is, because you literally tried to invoke it by saying that that our interpretations are something which is equal. So I'm just going to dismiss that burden because it kind of seems like you're blundering. It's the case that the principle of indifference is something which is performatively justified through our actions alone. And then also when it comes to the motivation for the principle of indifference, it's the case that I don't know where you're typing at, by the way. It's the case that it's going to be something which is prima facie acceptable. We're not talking about whether or not it's true. I don't care about whether or not it's true. It's talking about whether or not it's acceptable for debates, because if all else is equal, then the interpretation is going to be something which is accepted to be equal. Therefore, obviously, you'll be hedging the original claim. Now, in response to everything else, man. Anyways, you're saying I apologize. Yeah, so I'm going to need or a point for the basis that you tried to give originally, and I want to really, really, really stomp on that. The causation, the correlation point. You did not give actual justification as to why within that instance it would be causation rather than correlation. You're modeling your desires or your performances off of this specific idea, but that's not causation. The idea didn't cause the action. It's the case that the idea is correlated to the action, because a model means that you're working on this framework in a way in which is depicting something else, or it has something else in mind as inspiration. But that's just correlation. You're correlating these two things. That's not causation, Dale. So it's the case that obviously it would be something to mention.
All right, your time is up. Ian, you're the worst debater ever. Westbound, you're unmuted.
All right, so you define cotemporal as something that's happening simultaneously. That's fine. Again, one, I already provided some sort of justification for why it actually didn't. These things do happen. However, we can see that one is just occurring before the other. We can see within Gear 4, he has desire, and then after in Gear 5 he enacts this desire. Obviously there is this causation relationship. That's how I justify it. You ask how evidence can be used. I feel like that's an insane blunder on your part, because you're also using that to justify your scan, and you're also using denotation to justify your, I mean, not justify your scan, to justify your interpretation. This seems like an awful blunder on your end. If you try and really push these points through, then it's just not going to work for you. You're using the same things that I'm using, we're just using them in different ways. You're like awfully confused. Yeah, and by the way, the reason why I asked for the argument for uniform is because I actually hedged on my initial claim about the equal interpretation. I don't know if you tracked that. I said no. I don't mean equal interpretation. I just meant it in prose, as in this thing that we can't, like, you can't prove that yours is over mine. If you want to call it equal interpretation, you can call it whatever you want. But I just said it would just be two undefined variables within the set. I just like you to give me an argument for why they would be uniformly distributed. I know exactly what equal interpretations is. It's just me hedging on my original claim and me asking for justification on your claim. And then again, I already addressed the evidence to contextualize our claims. That's why we use the evidence to make these theories that are in line with what's actually happening. And then, like, on top of that, right, you also initially hedged because you said that the desire is some end goal. This seems completely contradictory to your initial claim, because you said that they would have this desire to do this thing.
Well, that's too bad, because now the time's up, and let me unmute Infinity.
Whenever I said it's an end goal, I'm saying ultimately all their actions lead up to that specific goal because it's the goal that they had initially speaking. It doesn't mean that they have to have that goal in mind, as in it's something that they're thinking of constantly, considering everything that would take up that specific space within the mind. Two, with the ontologically parsimonious point, ontological parsimony is going to be something in which is justified due to acceptance, because you're trying to give some parsimonious point. That's the original claim that you made. You said your point was more explanatory, and it's obviously the case that most accounts of parsimony are going to fit under ontological parsimony as a subcategory. If you're not going off of the quantity of unwarranted assumptions, which I did justify that you had some assumptions on your side, and I'm putting them into question, meaning that currently they're unwarranted, then it's the case that performatively, intuitively, and prima facie, the number alone, which is going to be justified through analyticity as well, the number alone between the conjunction and my non-conjunct, which is an atomic proposition, is going to be something which justifies your point being ontologically less parsimonious. In response to everything else, your base is the constants of the scan. Whenever you say that we're using the same thing, but we're using it differently, even if I were to grant that, it's the case that you using them differently is alone, or I apologize, alone is enough to put into question whether or not that base is enough reasonability to question whatever we're talking about. So no, I don't grant that your analytical criteria is the same as mine. And I don't grant that your analytical criteria is something which you can use as a basis. Whenever you say that I'm using my analytical criteria as a basis, is because I actually have justification that I can give if it's the case that I need to give it. The same as when it comes to my interpretation of the scan, because I'm also using the concepts of the scan, but we're interpreting it differently. The entire point is that I can give justification for my interpretation of the scan a priori, while seemingly you need empirical evidence for the claim that you're making, which I already responded to. Now, you were question bank. Whenever you say that the two undefined variables, all right, pledges, whenever you say that the variables can be defined, that's what the principle of indifference explodes off of, as in that's what it's inferred off of. It takes two undefined variables and says that because they're undefined and we can't equal out any subjective likelihood, it's the case that we can take these two explanations to be equal when we're trying to calculate which one is more likely or which one should be applied to the situation. And I'm using that to say that within this instance, it's the case that we can calculate some likely, at least one usage of it, because I gave multiple usages of it within this debate. One usage is to say that for your point to be true, it has to follow that there is asymmetrical complexity, or else it's going to be the case that for your affirmative point, the principle of indifference is
All
going to
right,
be
time
something
is
which
up.
applies. So it's
I'll mute you, Westbound. All right, there you go.
Yeah, again, it's you didn't even demonstrate why it's question begging. You just called it question begging. Just saying that it's a question beg doesn't mean it's actually a question beg. What I asked you for, in terms of uniform distribution, I said, yeah, where I'm stopping is basically we have two undefined variables, so we wouldn't be able to get an accurate gauge of their probability. Because we don't have an accurate gauge of their probability, it would then follow that we wouldn't be able to make claims based on their probability. And what you're doing is saying, oh yeah, this goes like a step further. I want you to justify that step further. Why can we equally distribute them in this case, slash uniformly distribute them in this case? You completely mistracked on the desires thing. Again, your contemporary thing is just something that is extremely self-defeating. If they initially had that idea, if they didn't initially have that idea and they want to follow it out, like as in some plan, as you said with the grocery store, and it's some contemporary thing, then it would be self-defeating in the sense that they would just do this thing. I want to save Vegapunk, or I want to kill Kaido, or I want to beat Kaido, and it's within my imagination. I'm enacting it with my actions in tandem. Then do you realize how Luffy would just use the subjective reality that wouldn't, under your interpretation, wouldn't have any sort of limits, any sort of relevant limits to the fight, at least, to just kill Kaido or like completely save Vegapunk, not just stall. I'm speaking more in bounds of what's happening within the story, what he's shown to do, and then you said I have more unwarranted assumptions. I don't see the unwarranted assumptions. I'm just gonna walk you through all of my assumptions here that I'm not even assumptions, all of the things that I'm attributing to this one grand thing. One, uh, we know that he has the ability to turn imagination to reality. This doesn't mean that he has subjective reality.
Okay, your time is over. I'm going to pause the time right now because I have to do something. So can we get someone who can moderate while I'm gone? I'll be back shortly. So I am pausing the time right now just to clarify for the rec. Can we get someone to moderate real quick? Who can moderate? Someone with perms. Someone like Ian.
Future, are you able
Someone.
to moderate? Ian, are you able to
No,
moderate?
hold on.
Marky, are you able to moderate? Mortify, are you able to moderate?
Uh,
Mono, are you able to moderate?
me and Mortified, me or Mortified can moderate.
Okay, so when does the
Okay.
timer start? Let me know.
Okay, I'm gonna let y'all choose when the timer starts. I'll be back. I'll let you know when I'm back.
Okay,
Fendi,
let me
you
know when the
ready?
timer starts for whoever's talking. Okay, you said am I ready?
Start it.
Okay, one, ontological parsimony already justified. Can you justify that ontological parsimony isn't something which is the best explanation, higher pleasure as best account of parsimony? Two, is the case that the end goal being contemporary does not defeat my own point. Secondly, or thirdly, is the case that you didn't show that he had the desire at all when it comes to him being within Gear 5, rather than it being some ultimate goal which was indirectly performed or actualized. Can y'all please meet him, by the way? Another point is the reason why I use the context of the scan to say that your basis was seemingly something which is unreasonable is because we interpret the context of the scan differently speaking. So if it's the case that your interpretation isn't the basis, but rather the contents, I'm not sure how that's something which is sequitur. How is it the case that the contents is something which infers the conclusion that you're trying to reach, which is that you have some reasonable basis to skepticize my overall point? That's the point of contention. Now, the principle of indifference being able to use or being used to scale the subjective likelihood between our two interpretations is kind of irrelevant here because I wasn't invoking the principle of indifference, at least within this specific point, to scale the subjective probability in different ways. So that's kind of irrelevant. And then also, just to be clear, I don't care about whether or not you see specific unwarranted assumptions which are pointed out because I'm not here to point them out for you. I'm here to convince the judges in which they can see already that I gave an argument, and it's the case that the argument is something which it stands. You saying that I didn't explain why I went circular. The reason why I went circular is because you're using the constants to justify the fact that you have a reasonable basis to question my interpretation of the contents, while I'm questioning whether or not it's the case that your content point is something which is leading towards a reasonable basis. That's the reason why it's something which is circular. Now, with the principle of indifference, that's just establishing that with the lack of motivation between priors of given hypothesis Y and X, it's the case that we accept them equally, meaning that there is some scalable difference between the two in the future if it's the case that we can update our beliefs or I apologize, yeah, update our beliefs to model some new or create some new hypothesis around that updated belief. It's called Bayesianism, dumbass. You don't know what you're talking about. Please, can we conclude? This is so irrelevant. After my next point. Or actually, can we just conclude? You didn't justify anything at all.
You done with that?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just.
Fine. I already explained why the context would be something that we can use to make these inferences. I understand what Bayesianism is. We update our credences using pieces of evidence that would support one theory or one hypothesis. Again, we've been doing this entire time. That's exactly why we're using things like denotation, things like the context, things like the actual scans to build this sort of credibility. The argument against ontologic parsimony is literally just the explanatory gap. I explained why the explanatory gap has why there has to be some sort of a explanatory relevance or relativity there. And on top of that, I'm gonna be completely honest. Like right now, we're just going on and on and on in circles. And by the way, I wanted to walk you through all of the things that I said. So basically, just to make this theory cogent for you, it's a I interpret this to be like turning imagination to reality. I don't see this as some subjective reality manipulation. It's just him doing things that are seen as unconventional. The user's body gains the property of rubber. That would be like conducive to that. It's because of his rubber abilities that seem so unconventional that he's able to do these things. We can see that time and time again he has these goals. He would likely have the goal to beat Kaido because he wants to fight him. He said over and over again that he wants to kill Kaido. He wants to save Onigashima. So he would be enacting these desires. The contemporary thing, I already gave the argument for that. You just completely didn't track that. And then also I already gave the argument for why desires would be something that would be this overarching thing. So it's just the case that we see how Luffy acts in accordance to his desires. We have multiple narrative uh, instances or instances within the narrative where we can make these conclusions and build some sort of probability. I understand Bayesianism, and I completely agree that we can update our credences with new evidence. What I was asking you is why does the starting point have to be this 50-50 thing, which is what you dropped. So yeah, like we're not even in disagreement there. We can conclude.
One, whenever you say it's unconventional, that has to be respective to some domain. So I'm not going to grant at all that it's unconventional. Therefore, there's a relevant reason to mention it outside the fact that it's obviously different from everybody else's ability. So it's the case that the domain will be how they fight. It's the case that they're doing these absurd things. I don't understand why the conventionality isn't going to be in respect to absurdities rather than it being in respect to something in which is not consistently performed, because everything is unconventional, because more times than not actions that are being performed are not as performed as they're not. Obviously, everything is going to be unconventional. Secondly, I never said that the principle of indifference is something that which we're going to apply at the start, even though the justification, just to be clear, is because the lack of announcement. So the reason why the principle of indifference is something which we apply at the start is because the lack of announcement when it comes to giving explanation, or I apologize, giving assumptions, or giving claims, or giving justification, or giving priors. So obviously, the principle of explosion is going to be something which we apply at the start, even though I never made that claim. That claim is irrelevant in response to everything else. Explanatory, yeah, anyways, explanations being relative when it comes to the power does not entail that my kind of ontological parsimony is something which is false. That would give justification as to why ontological parsimony, within this instance, hypothetically, if I were to grant that they're equal, is something which is not applicable. It doesn't mean that ontological parsimony, when it comes to my kind of something which is false. You have to justify that, one, the explanations are equal, and two, the ontological parsimony overall is false, which is what you tried to sneak in, but you realize you couldn't justify. Anyways, I agree that we've been doing that, which means that the principle of indifference is explained here. If you agree that we're applying these updates to our hypothesis, that gives credence towards the justification of the principle of indifference, because it's talking about the scale when it comes to subjective probability, because I don't grant objective probability when it comes to most instances. So it's talking about the scale when it comes to subjective probability. You have to explain how the desires existing is something which is self-defeating, because obviously they're conscious desires. Your conscious can be overridden by whatever is happening at the moment. They're temporal. It's called a temporal fact. It's something which is true at the time. So it's the case that you can possess some desire or conceivable notion at the time, but that may be changed given some overridence of another desire which is happening. But does that mean that ultimately speaking, you can't still have that desire later on? No, of course you can have the desire later on given your personality or whatever. It's just that you're not thinking of it within that instance. The
All
conceivability
right,
is talking
that's
about your
two
thought process, your
minutes.
imagination, which is temporarily.
I'll mute that.
You said principle of explosion. I'm assuming that was just a misspeak, or if not, then that's just a blunder, like completely unrelated. I'd like for you to give me your definition of ontological parsimony. I think there's a little bit of a, difference in how we see this. I'm not even denying ontological parsimony from the way I interpret it. I'm just saying that it can't be something that's like applicable here due to this explanatory gap that I've already provided. And also, what you just said about Bayesian credence, Bayesian updating, being able to justify uniform distribution, that was a complete sneak in. I don't see how Bayesian updating would be able to update our idea of uniform distribution being something that we would value. You haven't given any credence that would update, or any evidence that would update the credence for the theory. In that being, we would equally distribute something. We would go off of like scans or evidence, or for maybe one of our interpretations of this instance. Sure, that's what I thought you were talking about by Asian updating, but it seems like you're trying to extend it to this other thing, that being uh, lack of knowledge is something that would raise credence. That is some piece of evidence which I'm putting into question. You're just completely question begging right now, uh, and also like I already brought up how the desires would exist mutually. I don't know. We can conclude.
Yeah, I agree that you're making a claim that they exist mutually. I need justification for that. That's the point that you made overall multiple times over. You keep on repeating that claim. Secondly speaking, universal distribution is going to be something in which is the point of contention for this entire debate. We've already talked about that. I already gave justification as to why universal distribution is going to be something which is relevant. If anything, ontological parsimony is going to account for universal distribution already. Thoroughly speaking, I already gave my view of ontological parsimony multiple times over. You just can't track. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Fourthly speaking, it's the case that I don't care if you don't see it. Just to clarify for the judges, saying that he doesn't see why something is the case is not the same as putting that thing into question. I don't care if he sees it. I'm not here to convince him. I already gave explanations towards all my scans, ontological parsimony, and the way that I account for it, the principle of indifference. And yes, I didn't mean to say the principle of explosion. If I did say that, the in principle or the principle of indifference is something which is justified a priori. I already gave justification for that. Ontological parsimony, my account of it is something which is justified a priori. I already gave justification for that. I don't care if that's the way that you're interpreting it, whether or not that interpretation is something which is likely is going to be some point of contention. I don't agree with objective likelihood, meaning that you do have to use your priors to update something within a specific instance, subjectively speaking, because we're talking about a scale of the subjective probability in which exists. I already gave my type of account. I don't know what the fuck you keep on asking. I want you to explain how I'm question begging rather than just making the claim that I'm question begging. I gave a priori justification for literally everything that I said, alongside some empirical evidence for some of the claims that I made. Can we please conclude? But it's 2 minutes. Shit is so retarded.
Yeah, the issue is we see both happen. We see that when he fights, he has these desires. And we can even see like at the time when these desires update for Luffy's character, he doesn't accurately act upon those desires. And plus, we know that you can have mutual desires within an instance, and these aren't some things that conflict. And we know that he has both, so it would also just follow that it's either the case that when he's fighting, he would want to fight somebody, or like he would want to kill Kaido, or he would want to have fun, or he would want to kill Kaido and have fun. So it would just follow, mathematically speaking, that we would probably prefer the thing that I can also extend onto my outreach of this instance. And also, on top of that, you just keep bringing up ontological parsimony, but again, you can advocate for some like simpler theories being more true in this instance. However, like it just doesn't provide an argument for, like, let me give you an example. Let's say that the vase fell, right? And you just say, "Oh yeah, I'm guessing the vase fell because maybe it was like tilted wrong, or maybe it was off center, maybe the cat knocked it over, but the real reason why the vase fell was because an alien shot at it 50 million times. One is more complex, one is not as complex. However, in my interpretation of the alien being the one to do it would be, the gunshots on the wall, maybe like some fucking DNA on the ground, like this guy left his tail hanging out loose. So we can see, like, just through this thought experiment, that we would prefer, or the one that actually accounts for the evidence more, seems to likely be the thing that would gear us towards an accurate conclusion. And just because something is simpler doesn't necessarily mean that it inherently uh, provides credence, especially overriding evidence, which is something I'm asking you to justify uh, time and time again.
All right,
So
that's
yeah.
time. Wait, just to be clear, would y'all
No,
like
no,
to
we're not
like
concluding.
conclude?
Nope. So,
Would you
as a
like to
response,
conclude?
that's the
No.
most retarded
All
point.
right.
No, that's the most retarded point I've ever heard in my life. Whenever you say that simplicity isn't the thing in which accounts for the scenarios alone, you have to be smart. Use your brain, please. Look, whenever we're talking about simplicity when it comes to an explanation, we're talking about actual, accurate depictions of a given event. So it's the case that the hypothesis that the vase tipped over because of a cat is going to be something which explains that event, the same as the vase tipped over because of an alien shooting it is also going to be an explanation for that event. However, we say that one is more complex because of the existing million bullets in which will have to be fired at the vase, but that's just for that specific situation. Of all the information we have about the situation is that the vase tipped over. Obviously, one is less complex, ontologically speaking, in terms of its number of unwarranted assumptions. But whenever you try to draw that to the analogy, and which is obviously disanalogous to the situation where there's DNA and there's shotgun pellets, it's the case that the cat tipping over the vase is not some accurate depiction of an explanation when it comes to why the DNA is there and why the shotgun pellets are there. So whenever you say that there's some asymmetrical complexity, however, it does not follow that it still accounts for the explanation in a better way or the situation in a better way. But the analogy that you gave is disanalogous because the explanations are accounting for two different things. Whenever we're talking about two given hypotheses towards a situation, we're talking about its account for all the data within the situation. So it's the case that the cat tipping over the vase is something which doesn't actually determine whether or not it's true. I apologize. It doesn't actually determine or depict what is happening within the situation because the cat is irrelevant to the DNA and the bullets. So that would be an explanation which is irrelevant to that specific situation, meaning that the simplicity is not going to be something in which is talked about because the simplicity is usually off of entities in which accurately depict the entire situation. So that's disanalogous. In response to the other shitty points that you made, desires existing within a specific moment is the entire point of contention. Whether or not they're mutually or mutual is the entire point of contention. Whenever you say that there exists simpler theories being more true than accounts or my kind of parsimony when it comes to ontology, I want you to justify that those simpler theories are something which is more true or is more likely, especially since most theories of parsimony exist under ontological parsimony. There are subcategories of
All
ontological
right, that's
parsimony.
time. All right.
We can conclude.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Whoa, we can
Wow. I didn't
conclude.
expect that. We conclude. Wow. After all that? Wow. Okay.
Whoa,
Shit.
As a
whoa.
response to the other
Continue.
points, stop talking, please. As a response to the other points, whenever you say that there exist these contemporary desires, I can grant that at some point there may be the case with at least I apologize. At some point, it may be true that he has one desire, has one conceivable notion. By the way, since he agreed to conclude, well, actually, never mind. Anyways, at some
Whoa,
point
whoa,
there
whoa!
could be some
If you're gonna
conceivable.
start making new
I
points,
know, bro. Shut up,
what are
shut
you
up,
talking
shut up,
about?
shut up, shut up, bro. Restart the timer, my nigga.
All right,
He's
bro. You
interrupting.
know,
Mute up.
no, don't
Yo,
restart the
yo,
time.
mute up.
Keep
Yeah,
going,
he's
bro. You have
literally
one more minute.
interrupting me. Like interrupted, bro.
All right,
Restart the
add one
timer,
more.
bro.
Add 1 minute. That's it. You got
But
1
no,
minute. Go
okay,
ahead,
add
bro.
1 minute to the current timer. Yes, so we both see that.
No,
Yeah.
not to the current timer. You have 1 minute
No, no,
starting now
bro,
to make your
bro,
argument.
no, 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 restart because he can't quantify the actual time, bro. I barely say anything, my nigga.
Okay, no,
Can
no,
you restart?
starting now. Like we restart the time.
Okay,
It's
hold on,
starting now.
shut
You
up,
have
shut up,
1
shut up,
minute.
hold on. Are you fine with restarting the timer, moderator Ian?
Oh my God, no! Do
I mean,
not
I'm
restart
fine
the
with it.
timer.
Just
Just go
seeing if
1 minute.
whoever
Okay,
was
okay,
talking
he's
over
fine
him.
with it. Okay, let me know before you restart it. Are you ready right now?
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
you're good.
Okay,
Okay,
then
so
I want to
whenever,
talk if he's not gonna
no,
conclude.
mute
Like,
him.
wait,
Yo,
wait.
I
If
ain't
if
like,
he's
no,
not,
restart the timer
listen,
again.
no, no.
Mute him.
Like,
Mute
What's
what's
wrong,
him.
going
bro?
on?
Where's
He's
the
getting 4
moderation? Why
minutes
is he
free.
not
I'm gonna
muted?
talk then. I'm gonna.
Mute him. Mute
All
him.
right, go
Thank you.
ahead.
Restart the timer. Did you restart the timer?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, when it comes to our hypothetical battle, it's the case that all these external context is something which is de-eradicated, it's something which is eradicated, it's disqualified. So whenever we're talking about Luffy's in characterness against Kaido when it comes to the hypothetical battle, it's the case that he doesn't have, I don't have the basis of euphoria because he didn't just achieve this ability. So that is going to be something which is dismissed. It's the case that he doesn't have some other goal within the battle, for example, stalling the opponent. No, he just hasn't killing the he just has killing intent. I don't grant he had killing intent against Kizaru within that specific instance. I don't grant that he had killing intent against Kaido within that specific instance. Within that specific instance, dumbass, which he obviously ultimately did because he did defeat, or not killing intent, but he ultimately did want to win because he did defeat Kaido. Now, the justification obviously is that our characters are in character, but they have killing intent. So there's external context as to why there's some things in which are instantiated within those specific instances or that specific context. But within this instance, all the context is disqualified, at least all the relevant context. Whenever you say that we both know this, that's the point of contention. I don't grant that we know this. That's just you going circular. Knowledge is JTB, meaning it's true, justified beliefs. You have to justify that it's true and it's justified. That's the point of contention. You're repeating yourself, my nigga. The entire point is that within the specific instance where he awakened it, there may be some euphoric state, especially off of the way that he's acting, especially not specifically, but especially off of the way he's acting, and then that may disqualify your affirmative point because you're not affirmative for that specific point. So whenever you say you can't extend it onto your outrage, even though there's a difference, there exists a difference. Meaning I can extend it onto your outrage, which I already explained the numerical difference. It's mathematically true. It's true through analyticity. So I want you to justify the simpler theories in which you were talking about. You didn't give any justification for the simpler theories in which you're talking about when it comes to parsimony. And it's the case that ontological parsimony is something which is justified throughout everything that I just gave prior, my nigga. Fuck,
Are you
nigger.
good? All
Yep.
right.
You have to use
All
that
right, there you
word.
go.
You're the
Let's
most
go.
biased piece of shit. I'm picking another moderator. You're fucking
I mean, I
losing.
guess that's biased. I mean, with
I
people
said you're
interrupting
giving him
him, I
four
would just
minutes.
say
If he's
nobody
not
can
gonna
really
conclude,
hear
I
him, so
want
I
to
would
talk.
just
I
give
want
him
to talk.
more
You
time. I
absolute
mean,
idiot. You
but you can go. I
absolute
mean, you can go.
retard. You're a dumb idiot. You give him 4 minutes. I'm picking another moderator, or give me 4 minutes. Fucking loser. Actually, what's wrong with you?
so like you can just actually just go ahead instead of just
No,
talking to me. I
no,
don't
no,
know
hold
why
on.
you're
The
talking to me.
reason
You
why
can
he
just
doesn't
go
get
ahead and
4
talk
minutes
to
is because he
Infinity
was
though.
interrupting me during my timer, which is why I got
Yeah, I mean,
extra time, which wasn't
I
4
was
minutes. It was
No,
interrupting him.
you
Somebody
got
else was
two. No, no,
interrupting him.
listen,
You
Infinity, you
interrupted
got
him. So
2 minutes,
obviously, I
and then
just
I
gave
said
you.
I
And then
wanted to
I didn't hold on,
conclude.
but the entire 2 minutes did not go out. So obviously it's not
Let
gonna
me
add up to
finish.
4 minutes.
No,
And then
the
secondly
entire 2 minutes
speaking,
went out for you.
bro, the
You
time,
I mean,
had
hold on. The
he
two
had
reason
minutes.
why,
You got. Let me
hold on,
he
by
had
the
finish.
way,
20
by
more
the way,
seconds left.
yo,
I
Ian,
know
Ian,
Infinity,
can
can you
you
let
what
me
you so
please,
mad
finish?
bro?
about though.
Let me talk.
Hold on, Westbound,
Let
why are
me
you being
talk.
weird, bro?
Let me
Hold on, hold
talk,
on, hold on, bro. Let me
bro.
explain something, bro.
Like it's
Let me
my
explain.
turn to talk.
Okay,
You're not even letting
okay,
me
let me
talk. Are you
explain something.
serious?
No, you're literally complaining about the moderator. You're not even talking about the debate anymore. Calm
Okay,
down, bro. We're not
just
talking
let
about
me
the
give my
garbage.
point out so you can
All right,
understand
go
what I'm
ahead, bro.
trying to say
It's two
before you
minutes
argue.
though. I'm trying to say it's 2 minutes.
Bro, like I'm not going. No, because I'm mad. I'm mad. I'm mad. I'm mad. I'm mad.
All right, two
Listen,
minutes. You
let me
go
just
ahead.
explain my argument. You're not the moderator. Like
Go
it's just
ahead. You
that
can just
simple.
go ahead
You're not the
whenever you want.
moderator anymore.
Yeah, you can just go ahead
Anyway,
whenever you want.
Infinity, listen to
Yeah,
me.
we need a new
You had
moderator
two
then.
minutes. After your 2 minutes were off, done.
I don't grant
You
that they
cut
were ever
off.
off. Hey, did the
And then
timer ever go off, Ian? Timer,
you got cut
did the
off.
timer ever go off, Ian?
The moderator cut you off. He
No, he
muted
cut
you
me
Exactly.
because the
I
off
cut him
time was
off.
up.
before I
Somebody else
even
cut him
I
off.
gave
You cut
one
him
Listen
off
to
as
moderator.
me
well.
Yo,
speak.
I
hey,
mean,
Ian,
you
Listen
also
to me
cut him
speak.
off. So at
y'all
that
both
point,
cut me
obviously,
off.
I would just
Y'all both
grant
cut
You
him.
me off.
had
All right.
2 minutes. Let me
Just
speak,
you're just
please.
taking
Oh
Y'all
this
my
as
god,
both
a
I'm
cut me
fact.
actually
off. I
getting
did
mad.
not have
I'm
two
actually
I
minutes,
getting
my
mean,
nigga. What are you talking about?
me and you cut him off, so I just granted him more time. I
No,
don't
it's
like
not
By
about
the
what's
way,
going
me
was
down
cutting
it,
right
him
now.
off. I'm
bro?
not
Like,
talking
why is
about
this
Yeah,
that
gonna be
instance
but
where
weird,
he
bro?
spoke for 20
we can
seconds
go back
and
to
then
the debate if you want. You
let me
can just
finish.
like
Let me
keep getting
finish.
slammed.
Let
I
me
don't know.
finish.
I think
Let
you're
me
just trying to
finish.
deter from the debate because you're losing so bad right now.
Let me
I mean,
finish,
but
you
you can go ahead
absolute
though.
retard. You biased, stupid loser.
I mean, I
Like,
guess
I
I'm
didn't even
biased.
agree
I'm
to
just
this
really
guy, by the
getting
way. He
like
just
slammed
started
really bad
moderating.
right now.
Anyway, he literally just started moderating. Anyway, so listen to me. What I'm trying to say is, I'm
But
not
no, we
talking
need a
about
new
the 20
moderator, bro.
seconds that. Let me finish.
We need a new moderator. You just say you don't
Yes,
want
we
this
need a new
moderator.
moderator, but I'm not talking about the 20 seconds that he had to speak and then I cut him off and then the 2 minutes after. I'm not talking about that.
I
I'm
didn't. Oh
talking
my
about the
god.
2 minutes he had to speak. And then I said, okay, we can conclude, right? And then after that, you said, oh, no, no, no. Okay, well, Infinity wants to say something, so we're going to let him keep going. So I said, okay, if he wants to
No,
keep
no, no, no.
talking,
But
then I'm going
that's
to
your
make a
new
So I
response
point.
right
asked
now.
Infinity
No,
if
no,
he
no,
And I
had
no.
said this
anything to
three times.
say.
Let me
Ian,
finish. Let
hold
me
on,
finish.
is him
And I said
concluding
this
is
three
is his
times.
time
You
representing the point.
incompetent loser. You
Bro,
incompetent
you can
idiot.
hold on. You saying that you want to conclude is conceding your specific time for that moment because
No,
at that
it's
time
I
you didn't
said
have a response. Yo,
I
can I
said I
please finish,
want to
bro? Like,
conclude,
bro,
and
stop
then he
being
said,
weird, bro. Stop
"Okay,
being weird,
Infinity
bro. Stop
wants to
being
go."
weird,
And
bro.
I
Stop
said,
being
"All
weird.
right, if
Okay,
he doesn't want to conclude, then I
Westbound,
will
bro. Come
finish my
on,
point." I
bro,
said this three
Westbound, bro.
times.
Come on, bro, Westbound. The
I pick
reason
a different
why,
moderator. I
hold on,
don't
the
care.
reason
Pick
why
a
I got
different
two more,
moderator. I don't
hold on,
care.
the reason why I got 2 more minutes is because you said you wanted to conclude, which is conceding your specific time for that talking time or that talking point.
Yes,
So it's the case
assuming
that
you
he
also
granted.
wanted to
Oh my
conclude.
god, I did not, bro. No, I agreed to conclude before you gave your point. I didn't know you were gonna give new
Okay,
points. So
I didn't know you didn't want to
oh,
conclude. So once I found out
that's
you
why
didn't
you
want
knew
to
of that because
conclude,
I literally said I don't want to conclude after. What are you
I
talking
did,
about?
yes. And then once you said that, listen, can I explain? You said you wanted to conclude. Then after I said I wanted to conclude, but at the time I said I wanted to conclude, you weren't finished yet. And I understand that and I respect that. But after I found out you didn't want to conclude, after that I said, okay, if you don't want to conclude, I'm gonna just give my refutation now. And
But
then like
Westbound,
I just
okay,
got cut
listen,
off.
listen, listen. But Westbound, the entire point, and I'll let you finish. Please do not cut me off. The
All
entire
right, go.
point is that you agreed to conclude. You want to conclude because you thought either one, you responded to everything, or I didn't track something. So obviously, it's the case that you believe all the responses you gave were already adequate. Meaning that if I give a new response, that's something new in which you may want to respond to, which is completely fine for you to respond to after the point that I'm about to give. But you conceding your time by saying you want to conclude is obviously going to be something which is reasonable to do because you think you responded to everything that occurred before. But I don't think you did, and I wanted to give a new point, which is why I did not conclude.
Yes,
Like,
I
bro.
wanted to give a new point. So if you didn't want to conclude, I wanted to add on and reinforce my argument because I have the liberty to do so with my time. And if I can't just get it stripped away without my consent,
Okay,
like
look,
let me
look,
put it
look.
for you
We
this
can
way.
continue with no moderation.
No, obviously moderation infinity, but we're not
Oh my
agreeing to
god,
that
bro.
fucking
Like,
idiot.
bro, I'm not agreeing to 4 minutes of talking time. Like, bro, like
Okay, no, we
what?
can do 2 minutes. We can do 2 minutes.
No, you're okay. Then go. Like, bro, who's the moderator?
No, I mean 2 minutes after I get my four
Let me
minutes.
moderate.
Like what?
Two
No.
minutes after I
Like
get my
what?
4 minutes is fair.
Okay, you know what, bro? Just because I want to progress, sure, but I have to choose. I have to be able to choose a moderator.
Who's the
Can I
moderator?
moderate?
I'm fine with mono moderating.
Give godly moderation.
Uh,
I take the 2 minutes.
I'm okay. Golly, go ahead. But no, okay. The thing is though, one, okay, is he actually going to time? Is he he actually gonna cut you off.
Yes, he's actually gonna cut me off.
Okay, golly, mute him when the timer goes off. Do not start talking when the timer goes off. Mute him when the timer goes off, and then unmute me.
Oh my god, bro. All right. Anyway, go. All right. So first of all, the accurate depiction. I understand your argument. You're just like completely going with what I'm saying. We're talking about accounting for evidence. What do you think that is? That's literally accounting for evidence. Uh, On top of that, we're talking about enacting his desires. I already gave the argument as to why he would be having these desires. He literally does these in his form, and I'm also making something cogent or with. Excuse me. Oh, I'm making something cogent with all of the pieces of evidence provided. I'm not gonna lie. I did just want to complain. I don't have much to say right now. However, very important point. very, very,
So I
very
can
important.
moderate.
Okay,
Hold
he's
on.
I
back.
can
We're
moderate.
done with the gully shit. All right,
Chill,
go ahead.
chill,
So,
chill, chill. I'm still going. I'm still going.
all
I'm
right, go ahead, go
still
ahead. My bad.
going. I'm still going. I'm still going. I'm still going. Hold on. I'm still going.
When did you start?
Dude, I'm
When
so
did you
fucking.
start, man?
Gully, bro, that has to be 2 minutes, bro. He doesn't even have another
Nope,
point, bro.
not
He's
even
just
2 minutes.
chatting.
Not even 2 minutes. Not even 2 minutes. All right,
Okay.
listen. I'm just laughing. All right, listen. He still understands his mission. He still does these things. We see that he still has the desires to kill. He still enacts these desires. It's not like, oh, he stops having fun or and just like enacts this thing after he stops having fun. Like it's very clearly the case that he's laughing and he's enjoying himself while he's killing or while he's trying to kill Kaido. This was a very important thing that I was going to bring up during his final clash when he actually defeats Kaido. So we do see that Luffy. We have some sort of basis for saying that Luffy does hold these things mutually. On top of the thought experiment that I gave earlier, an
This
account to
has to be
calculating
2 minutes, bro. This
credences.
nigga is
No,
biased.
no, 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 no. It's not 2 minutes.
I don't even know when you started. That's the
It's
issue.
not even
No, I'm
2 minutes.
talking
It's
about
not. Wait,
Gali, bro. This nigga Gali
Gali's
is
wait,
so
Gali's
biased.
moderating. Gali's moderating.
Okay,
Gali's
you can have
moderating.
20 seconds for my bad for cutting you off. Go ahead.
Yeah,
21
bro.
seconds.
Okay, Gali, at 20 seconds, bro. I got cut off by two people. Wait, no, 40 seconds. That's two people. Look at me.
What? No, yo, just go, bro.
I'm
Stop
bullshit.
playing.
I'm lying. I'm lying. I'm lying. I'm lying. If I'm lying, I'm lying. All right, listen. Um. Anyway, yeah. So we can even see like there we do have some basis for saying that Luffy can mutually hold these beliefs. Because we know that he's able to do these things. It would just be consistently within his character. He's able to enact multiple desires simultaneously. You still haven't responded to Kotem.
Okay, one.
Alright.
Okay, chill. Okay, bro. Let me know when you start the timer, Gully.
No, I basically did it. I said go, and then whenever like he actually started
I'll
talking about
take
points,
over
I
from
started
now.
it.
Don't
Okay,
worry. I
Zolf is
can take
taking over.
over.
Zolf, do you have your timer ready? Let me know when
Yeah, start
you
right now.
start.
Start right now. Start right
Okay,
now.
so one, the entire point is that when we're giving explanations for a situation, it has to be the case that the situation is accounting for all data, and then we use the ontological simplicity to disqualify some explanation between the two, or some hypothesis between the two. So it's the case that the cat tipping over the vessel does not give an account or an accurate depiction of why it's the case that the DNA is on the floor and the shotgun pellets are on the wall. So I'm not agreeing with what you're saying at all. It's the case that simplicity does actually account for all events when we're talking about what the goal of ontological parsimony actually is, given some explanation why, typically speaking. Now, I'm putting into question whether or not he does it within the fucking form. You haven't gave justification. The skin that you're saying does not justify that he has the goal or desire temporarily. It's a temporal fact. So whether or not that temporal effect is actualized rather than being in potency or rather than being something which is put to the side until after the battle is something of which is the point of contention, my nigga. You saying that he can do this thing is not justification as to why he is doing this thing. You're an affirmative for this. I can have multiple things currently speaking. Anyways, understanding the mission is not the same thing as having conceivable notions at specific points in the battle. The entire point is that when he gets out of gear 5, or all these prior instances when he's in gear 5, the entire point is whether or not he mutually has these desires or goals or conceivable notions. I can grant that he can have multiple desires at once, but the entire point is it the case that he's thinking of wanting to win, or is it the case that when he first achieves gear 5, he's simply just thinking of having fun, in which actualizes things and which indirectly lead to him winning? My nigga, he can have the desire ultimately, as in this was the initial goal, but is it the case that is it the case that the initial goal that he had, which may not be something which is immediate within that specific instance, because I don't grant that he has killing intent between all the scenarios that you named. I don't grant he's trying to kill anybody. I just grant that he has specific goals, like for example, stalling Kizaru or ending the battle with Kaido to save everybody at one specific instance. Nothing that you gave actually gives justification for your overall points, my nigga. Like you're just repeating yourself, laughing. You can just indirectly, or all the points that you gave when it comes to his laughter and euphoric state could just lead to the indirect attacks or indirect performances for the actualization of the goal. And then also when it comes to Bayesian updating being something which justifies the principle of indifference when it comes to a scale, it's analytical. So it's the case that the principle of indifference allows for a scale, like it infers a scale, typically speaking, if it's the case that they're not equal. And if they're not equal, because the Bayesian updating, because obviously we're updating the hypothesis that we have in comparison to its original state, that updated hypothesis is going to be something which is at a higher scale than the original hypothesis state. It's lesser, ontologically speaking. So there's a scale difference. If there's a scale difference, analytically true, or analytically it's true that the principle of indifference is something which is justified. It's simple. Stop ratting. What the fuck?
Is that all?
Yeah. Can we
All right. I'm on mute, West.
Uh, just completely stupid things being said here. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say stupid. Things that I believe are wrong. You said that none of the things I say justify that he would have these beliefs. He makes claims related to protecting Vegapunk. He gives advice to help Vegapunk within the Gear 5. It probably means that he wants to protect Vegapunk. He literally punched Kaido through a volcano with a nuke to kill him. Obviously, like, there are these things that we can use to infer the fact that he wants to enact these desires, and then things you said about indirectly and like following through the steps of him like wanting to win. That's fine. But we do know that that's completely incoherent, and not, and even if you want to say incoherent, it doesn't match up well with you saying that he's enacting these desires in real time. He's literally doing this reality manipulation while fighting this person, rather than setting this reality manipulation and then step by step enacting this. Uh, Again, you haven't given a like any sort of justification against like any sort of a probability and concerns to what the scan actually means. You're on the affirmative here, and you're just trying to use other scans. Uh, I'm trying to use scans to, I guess, decrease probability. However, yours doesn't really like. Even if I grant you all of this stuff, you still don't prove likelihood for your case. You haven't provided any sort of priors for why your definition of him turning imagination to reality would be something that we value. I'd like for you to give an argument for how it infers a scale. We can update the scale, even with, and by the way, by scale here, I mean something that's 50-50. And then when I mean scale of the second part, it's something that is undetermined. So in this scale Y, we can still update that scale Y and get a general gauge even without this thing. For example, we know that 2x plus Y, 2x has a higher probability of being correct, being bigger than Y does, because we have these external factors giving context to it, right? So just it being a scale, or just it helping us update credences,
All
or
right, time's up. I'm Infinity. There you go.
The credences are going to be the set of the prior, so I don't know why you keep on saying update the credences. Like, if you're saying that there's a new initial belief, that wouldn't make any sense because that would be oxymoronic. It can't be new and initial. It's the case that we're not updating the credences. We have credences that we're basing the hypothesis off of. We're updating the hypothesis, which is distinct from the credences. So you're wrong on that. Secondly, verbal deliberation isn't the same as conceivable deliberation. So when it talks about, for example, him possessing, I apologize, when he speaks about wanting to protect this nigga, the desire is independent of the conceivable notion. You can possess a desire, but that's independent of the conceivable notion. It's the case that you could have subconscious desires, which that wouldn't be in your imagination. Or yeah, we're talking about conscious desires, conscious notions. So it's the case that the verbal deliberation or the verbal declaration of wanting to protect this nigga may be in respect to the domain of stalling, which he succeeded at, because it's true that he justified or he actualized stalling. But is it the case that he wants to? Is it the case that he had to correct thought in terms of acting in a way in which leads towards the victory overall in terms of protecting him from his death? Or is it the case that he just impeded the progression of his death by a couple of minutes or hours or whatever is the case? The diction point, by the way, that you tried to bring up for the imagination shit is not justify your diction. Our pleasure is your justification cannot be diction because nothing at all in the diction applies your point. I already gave justification as to why it's talking about my analytical criteria, which I did earlier. I'm not going to repeat it because you did say, oh, it's irrelevant. I want you to explain why it's irrelevant, my nigga. You just said it was irrelevant because you didn't fucking track it. I'm not even sure how you calculate probability, and I'm not sure if you're using objective probability or subjective probability. Another thing is I'm on this affirmative for specific points, not all the points. There are claims that you made. Whenever you say affirmative, I'm assuming you're saying that I affirmed my scale. I grant that I affirmed my scale, but if you're talking about positive and negative claims, it's the case that the difference between the two is irrelevant. It's trivial to bring up because if I were to say that something is not the case, that would be a negative claim, but I'm saying it's true that it's not the case, therefore that would be a positive claim. So if I make a claim such as that, and you make a claim such as that, just because I affirm, quote unquote, the positive status in its base doesn't mean that it'll be something which isn't ultimately negative or something which isn't ultimately trivial to bring up. It definitely is trivial to bring up. Can we please conclude? Like, you didn't give any evidence for anything. You're just repeating yourself. And you saying I didn't prove the probability is something that is just repetition. I gave evidence for everything I needed to give. Seemingly speaking, it's more subjectively probable or epistemically probable that my position is true, meaning that your position is less subjectively probable, currently speaking. And I'm, like I said, I'm not sure of how you calculate probability or probability.
am I unmuted? Okay. Yeah, I like the argument for being independent for the first thing you said. Sure, it can be related to stalling. I'm not like in denial of that, right? But again, this doesn't seem to be something that like that's exclusionary. Uh, We know, and like we can even use this sort of justification. And by the way, I need the scan. Somebody please send the scan where Luffy's literally punching the shit out of Kaido, the Bajran gun. That right there, that is the evidence for him just like wanting to kill somebody or having like this sort of kill intent. Basically, we use that as a basis for just there being killing intent over the entire. Can you just start saying the N word instead? I don't think I will. Anyway, wow. Uh, we're using this as some basis to go back into, or not even back in time, to say that yeah, he would probably have this thing while simultaneously wanting to have fun throughout this case, and even then it just builds a basis for him being able to do this thing uh, while just being within some sort of confines, being some sort of limitations. Two responses ago, you also brought up JTB. I need you to prove that that's actually what knowledge means. I don't take that to mean knowledge just by true belief. Inherently would mean that we know something. And then obviously, I didn't mean know as in it, like this epistemic definition, more so no, based on the evidence provided, like we can probably come to this conclusion. So it's more so used in prose. And that's
All right, time's up. Infinity, you're unmuted.
Basing your
Go ahead.
belief off of new evidence is obviously going to be epistemic. So obviously you meant knowledge or know in an epistemic way. Two is the case that it's the most consistent definition when we're trying to determine what actually evaluates and coherence his beliefs when it comes to reality. Thirdly, it's the case that if you're using knowledge in a specific way in which is idiosyncratic because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, then I guess mentioning JTB would be irrelevant. The reason why I brought up JTB is because that would just be you repeating the claim that the claim is true, but I don't grant that the claim is true. Because obviously if it's a justified true belief, then the claim would be true and justified. I don't grant that it's true and justified. I already gave justifications for evidence. Also, when it comes to the independence, it's the case that brain dead people are able to announce certain things. However, obviously, since they're brain dead, a part of their consciousness is not functioning, meaning that there can be verbal interactions or there can be verbal announcements independent of conceivable notions. Secondly speaking, you can just performatively justify that as well. We're able to speak of things that we're not conceiving of in the moment. Like, for example, it's the case that I don't have the conscious notion. I can have subconscious notions, but that's not related to conceivability. I can have conscious notions in which portrays what I'm doing in actuality when it comes to verbally disclosing or announcing something. But it's the case that I can also have subconscious speaking patterns. Like I can have, for example, consistencies when it comes to speaking that happens independent of my conscious desires, or in other words, my imagination or conceivable notion. This can be something which is intuitive or I fall back onto. It's culturistic. There's multiple things. And finally speaking, whenever you say that he has this ability that he used against Kaido, which will obviously imply the intent to kill, I'm going to need justification that he had the intent to kill rather than using his priors to suspect that Kaido would be able to survive it. Because seemingly speaking, it's not in character for Luffy to want to kill. But the reason why it not being in character would be something which is irrelevant is because in the hypothetical battle, we agree that they're in character, aside the fact that Luffy wants to kill Kaido. So it's the case that he has killing intent within a hypothetical battle. So all the in character limitations when it comes to his killing intent within a verse would be something that's not applicable. Justify that he tried to kill Kaido within that specific instance with the weapon rather than trying to end the battle to heavy injury or throwing him off the island or whatever he did. My nigga, nothing that you said is actual justification for what you're talking about. You're just repeating yourself. I gave evidence for everything I need to give. You have no basis for.
All right, time's up. Seahawks being 49ers. I'll meet you, USD. There you go.
thank you very much. All right, first, proof that brain dead people can do that. Yes, these things can also exist in tandem. This just sounds like a massive intuition pump to me. Yes, you can declare this thing. However, subconsciously, you can have these like other desires or like other overriding reasons. And first of all, you'd be presupposing that these subconscious desires. Well, one, that these subconscious desires would be action guiding, if in terms of whatever you think that Luffy's ability is subjective reality, obviously here. So you would have to prove that that's some sort of motivating factor. We agree that these two things are different. I'm just saying that we can add credence to this unknown, i.e., his subconscious. Whatever he's thinking subconsciously, using what he's consciously declaring. So I'm not indicating that any of these things are necessarily the case. I'm just saying, based on evidence provided, we can update credences, the probability for these things. And also the JCB thing you brought up. Okay, I understand what you meant. You were just saying, oh yeah, it's just this redundancy that you created within your argument. You're saying that it's true, but that it's no knowledge. However, you can understand that within the definition I gave, within it being in prose, I said it's true because the evidence that I used would justify some sort of credence, indicating its likelihood. And this doesn't even have to be necessarily the case. That's fine. I don't really care. Again, this is some the way the way we can also infer that he wanted to kill Kaido. It would just be the case that one, we know his goals before the fight. Two, constant dialogue, like in like interrelationship between his crew and like Kinemon and all of them throughout Wano would just help dictate this. And then also we can see just through the surrounding context, he does an attack that leads to his death. Under the island was just ocean water. He does this literally massive.
All right, time's up. Infinity, you're unmuted.
The entire point
Yeah.
is whether or not the attack itself, when he was launching it, had killing intent behind it. So even if it's a case that it indirectly may lead to his death, which I'm not even sure if Kaido's dead, that does not at all lead to the conclusion that he had the intent behind it. Secondly speaking, whenever he's punching Kaido, is it the case that he's aiming where he wants Kaido to go? Thirdly speaking, is it the case that he still has priors in which allows Kaido to survive this? That goes to the back to the original point. By the way, none of the goals, interrelationships, and dialogues that you mentioned is actual justification for killing intent, but rather the goal of victory, which is independent of one Gear 5 Luffy, because you're talking about prior to the battle, and two, the things that happen during the battle you have to justify is something that which leads to killing intent specifically. Bro, mute the nigga. Like, why is it only when I'm speaking, my nigga? I don't grant any of the evidence that you gave. Action guiding, whenever you say action guiding, that presupposes that within that instance, I was using some action guiding instinct. So intuition and instinct are two different things. I meant instinct initially speaking. We know that we're able to instinctively make action or perform actions, like, for example, us flinching as a response to people's attack or us flinching as a response to people's movement. That's something which is subconscious, is not within our desires to do in terms of conscious desires or our conceivable notion. Mute your mic, you have an echo, Zolf. It's the case that these conceivable notions is something which is independent of the instinctful action because they're subconscious. And whenever it comes to justification for brain dead people being able to speak, we have justification which is obviously in front of us. You nigga, you're speaking, you're brain dead. Also, there's empirical evidence which I sent in chat. And then finally speaking, it's the case that you have to justify the verbal deliberation of something which justifies the domain of conscious desires rather than what I'm talking about, especially since the subconscious justification is something that I wish I gave to the side. I'm going to send empirical evidence, by the way. So can we conclude? And by the way, it's not just about speaking, it's just about promoting variables or announcing variables in some way. You have some attributed meaning. They have
Are you
intended meaning.
fucking serious? Wizards with guns?
Is that an actual
Yeah. All
question?
right. All right. Wait. Can someone start reading them so I can start?
Yeah, but on Infinity, that wasn't even my mic, but you can continue. Go ahead. Hurry up.
Can I
Hurry up.
start?
Timer
Is he
starts.
muted?
Go ahead. Go ahead. He's muted.
Oh, my
Hurry.
bad. My bad. Okay, start the time now. One, I don't even see why this psychic speaks with the brain dead would be like some reliable thing. I don't see how this is something that can actually draw out somebody's deepest internal desires. Uh, Again, these things like also exist in tandem. Just huge intuition pump. I understand your compartmentalization of that. Regardless, goal for killing intent or victory, this isn't something that is like entirely like it doesn't really matter that much. I'm completely fine with it being either or. Either interpretation of what his goals are for this instance would just prove my claim, and not prove my claim but add credence to my claim. So you misspoke on the intuition, that's fine. But I still I still don't care about how the instinct and how it relates to some sort of intent. I need you to justify some sort of correlation there. You're just question begging at this point. I don't doubt that maybe people like, even if I steelman or like grant that people would be able to do this thing, that it would be just this driving factor. That's literally it. We can conclude you did not track a lot of things. It was just like a very one-sided win. Wait, and also wait. I still have time, right? Wait. Don't end my time yet. I have to look for the scan. Manga, see, because you guys are so fake. The audience members are so fake. I asked like 3 responses ago for somebody to send the scan of Gear 5 Bajrang Luffy to or Bajrang Gun Luffy, and nobody did it. I'm not gonna lie, that's like just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So like I have a hit list. I looked at everyone in the chat. I'm not very happy with everyone in the chat. Especially definitely not the Synth Lord or whatever's Synth Lord. Dude, I gotta stop thinking about synth, man. Anyway, 1098. Okay, wrong chapter. Is it 1030? Wait, please don't mute me. Hold on,
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry, buddy. Infinity, it's your turn to talk. Go ahead.
Okay, whenever you say it's reliable, we know that all speech is, and I'm going to send a definition of scans after my point. Like, I'll just clarify that point after, I guess. One, it doesn't add credence to the claim. You keep repeating that. Two, explain how I'm question begging. I'm not just going to be a low tier and allow you to just say that I'm question begging without you giving an explanation. Three, whenever you say it's not a driving factor, you want me to explain why it's a driving factor. The justification is that we understand that you can speak of things but not have it within your mind, consciously speaking, which is why instinct is something which is relevant to that point. Now, you saying I question bag does not give an account as to why I actually question bag. That's just you not being able to respond to the argument, so you say that I question bag. And just to clarify, look at scans real quick. This is what speech is. All speech is the expression of the ability. I apologize. The expression of or the ability to express thoughts and feelings. So if in this specific instance, I believe that the conjunction is something which is exclusive. So I believe that the or is there. I think it's an inclusive. I apologize. I believe it's an inclusive disjunction. What that means to say is that it's and or. It's able to express feelings, also subconscious. Anyways, feelings. So it's the case that obviously brain dead people feel things. They have emotions. They only have a non-functioning part of the brain, not the entire brain. Typically speaking, is the thing which is non-functioning. So it's the case that they're able to express themselves through a we see multiple retards do that, meaning that they're trying to express things. The same as babies, for example. It's the case that their consciousness is not fully developed, but they can still express by crying, for example, or through some type of verbal communication that they are hungry or that they're feeling pain. There's actual, obviously, empirical evidence for what we're talking about. I don't know why the fuck you're writing, but either way, even if it's the case that brain dead people cannot perform this action, I gave justification outside of that. Thoroughly speaking, you have to give justification for your point because even if it's the case that both of these claims are false, you still didn't justify your point, meaning that your affirmative claim wouldn't go through and you would lose this specific point, dumbass. My bad for calling you a dumbass. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. Mm-mm.
Got like a little bit left, unless that's all you have. Oh well, too
I-
late. Seahawks beat up the 49ers. Westbound, you're free. Let's get it. Hurry up, Westbound. Let's get it.
Oh, hi, guys. Yes, returning to what I was saying. The reason why you're question begging, you're justifying the intuition with like some deeply rooted intuition that you have. You sent some scans to try and justify this. All the scan really proves is that, I guess this YouTube video, I looked through it while you were speaking. It's very informative, in fact. All it shows is that some quote unquote brain dead people can have their thoughts, I guess, actualized, right? But that doesn't mean that these things would be what we value when we're talking about intent to gear five. And then also like, and it's not even justification that would like correlate to the two in like some meaningful manner. And by correlate the two, I mean something that we can make them relevantly distinct, and based on that relevant distinction, we can look at one and then just argue that this is some driving factor. Speech, yes, you can talk about. Let me see this definition: the expression or the ability to express thoughts and feelings by articulate sounds. Yes, thoughts and feelings. I don't see reason why this would be like some deeply rooted subconscious thing. You'd have to prove that. I feel like you're very hard pressed in proving that. I just like I do think that thoughts and like active intentionality are distinct from intuition, and things that you would generally like for example flinching, right? And I'm gonna spend the rest of my time looking for this scan. I cannot find it for the love of my life, not the love of my life. Anya Taylor-Joy, she's a very beautiful young lady. um Dude, I'm so cooked. I can't find this scan. This is so
Well, you have
bad.
till 57, so you might be cooked.
Are you serious?
I'm
All right, bro,
serious.
you
Oh
know
well,
what?
it's too late, buddy. Okay, Fanny, you're unmuted. Godly, I'll write
Yeah,
to you.
so
Go ahead.
there's an actual disease or mental deficiency within the world that disallows people to conceive of things. However, they're still able to speak, and it's the case that, like internally speaking, they're not unable to conceive of things, but they're still able to speak and perform actions. So obviously, that's justification for the video. You obviously didn't watch it; you're just lying because in the video they attempt to speak, although it's the case that there are specific mental deficiencies in which this allows them to conceive of what they're talking about or conceive of exactly the idea that they're trying to portray. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that they make noises within the video, so that's actual justification for that as well. And then also, I'm not trying to justify any intuition. So whenever your explanation of or whenever you give the explanation of why a question bag, it's the case that that doesn't actually account for a question bag because I never made a claim currently speaking or recently speaking of some intuition which I'm trying to justify through intuition. Never did I even talk about intuition other than when I misspoke, and you literally acknowledged that I misspoke. So I don't know why you're trying to bring that up, my nigga. Anyways, so you can't justify that within the instance where he is speaking or giving some vocal delivery. Anyways, what the fuck? You can't justify that when he's giving some vocal delivery that entails he's conceiving of the subject in mind. You can conceive of the features around the subject. You can conceive of the subject. You may be subconsciously speaking. You can conceive of the idea in which you're trying to talk about overall. You don't have to conceive of the subject within a specific instance. Westbound, I seen that, by the way. Nice try, buddy. And then also when they're talking about this not being justification, the video not being justification, it's not just the video. It's the video in collaboration with literally everything else that I said. So even if all the claims that I made relative to this point didn't go through, you have still yet to justify that it's the case that the verbal deliberation or the verbal announcement is going to be something which entails he's thinking of this specific thing. Also, no, it is not the case that killing intent alongside the victory or the goal of victory in mind is both going to help your point. No, because we talked about killing intent for a specific reason, while the victory may be something of which he's not thinking of due to the euphoric state. That goes back to the original point. So it's just the same question, same basis that I can apply when it comes to both interpretations, either killing intent or the goal of victory, and you just repeat yourself and go circular. So there's specific points in the battle where he may have failed when it comes to defeating Kaido.
Westbound, you can talk now.
Thank you. All right. Again, that doesn't prove it's some relevant trigger. You're just like saying that, oh, you can bring this out through some means. Doesn't prove what I'm asking you to prove. Also, the justification within the video, I don't see that as justification. They could just be faking the right. And then on top of that, yeah, then it's just non sequitur because you're not proving what I'm asking you to prove. And also, you're not tracking with the Kaido thing. I'm talking about either can be the case within my given thought experiment, and when we slot in one, the overarching point that I'm still trying to make would just follow through. That's just something you haven't engaged with in any meaningful way. We can conclude.
One, whenever you make the claim that I'm question begging, you just keep on making that claim, but you haven't given actual account as to why I'm question begging. Two, them faking it is less parsimonious. Three, them faking it is something which is irrelevant because of the collaborating evidence. So even if it's the case that some of the contents within the video does not portray what I'm talking about, it's the case that my point is still true, independent of the video, and your point is untrue, even independent of the justification for my point. The lack of justification for my point does not entail justification for your point. Maybe you're stupid or something, but I literally engaged with the point that you just said I didn't engage in 5 seconds before you spoke. So obviously you can't track, you don't know what you're talking about. So you just try to refer back to the background claims such as your question begging, it's irrelevant, or I don't see why that's the case. All those three claims, all those three types of claims are irrelevant within this debate, at least if they're made from you, my nigga. Justify your points. Stop just repeating them, my nigga. Within the
Seahawks
hold on,
win.
within the video, bro, I know you. Within the video, it's the case that there
Oh,
is
well,
actual
they're probably
consecutive
gonna.
justification, but it's independent of the video.
They're probably gonna
Bro,
win.
bro, yo,
Oh,
bro,
my fault, my fault.
bro. Anyways, within the video, yeah, within the video description, they give some citations for the niggas being retarded. And then it's the case that obviously they also believe it. And then all second definition when it comes to speech, it doesn't have to be just verbal, by the way, or in terms of vocal, it can be bodily speech as well. You can speak with your body or performances, but that's independent of what we're talking about, though. It's the case that they give multiple definitions, of which is talking about an exclusive and inclusive disjunction. Within this instance, you have to justify that it's inclusive. Like, what the fuck? Or exclusive, I apologize.
All right, well, me, Westy.
Can we get conclude? Or can we conclude?
Bro, this is the funniest video I've ever seen in my life. Vinny, you're a troll, bro. I love it.
Can we conclude,
Bro, I'm
nigga?
actually watching this. This is so funny.
Yeah, why are you watching that shit?
Yeah, I want
Bro, you think I'm not gonna look? I'm like,
Why?
yo,
Why is he actually looking at my evidence, bro?
yo,
We gotta conclude, bro. This shit is going on for way
no,
too long, nigga.
bro, no.
Oh my god, yo, how many points do you have, bro?
No, bro, it's video. Hold on. One, give the citations. Two, it will be. I wouldn't give an argument for one. Wait, hold on. All right, I gotta lock in. All right, one, give the argument for why it's more parsimonious. Two, look at the hashtag. It says comedy, sketch comedy. This would provide. These pieces of evidence would update the credences for it just being something that is not entirely serious. Uh, oh my god.
Okay, it's a
All
time
right,
over, nigga. This nigga
listen.
just laughing, bro.
If I you didn't engage with the
conclusions,
kind of
bro. I ain't
point.
gonna
Okay,
lie.
okay.
It's
What I
not
mean by you
conclusions.
didn't engage with the kind of point is you didn't like obviously you engaged with it in the sense that you talked about it, right? But you didn't engage with it relevantly. You didn't actually engage with the point that I was trying to make there. And so far as that is just like some dual relationship that, or not dual relationship, that we can have this thing existing at the same time, and then we project this universally through some means. We can conclude. I'm not gonna lie. And also, I need wait. On top of that, very important thing that I just said. Uh, what you just said right now about every other thing you said. Oh yeah, but what I'm saying is true, and what you're saying is not true. W sneaking. if that was just like some sort of independent thing, sure, fine, say whatever you want. But I do need you to justify why it's not true or why it's true. If you think you like adequately justified it through some like external beliefs that you already mentioned and we didn't go over yet, then that's fine. Like we can just completely conclude on this. But if it was just you saying it just to say it and then say, oh, Westbound didn't respond to this, so I win, then yeah.
Okay, so just to
I'm
clarify,
done.
as a response to what you just said, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to sneak that in. That's just an announcement. I'm talking about all for the evidence that's given. So all for the evidential justification slash motivation for all the points we've talked about so far. I don't believe you justify anything. So I'm going to dismiss you trying to make the claim and sneak in indirectly that everything that you're saying is true rather than everything that I'm saying is true. And I'm going to respond to the other point. Whenever you ask me to explain why it's more parsimonious, I talked about the citations, citations in the video. I need to send that to you. I don't need to send that to you. When it comes to the comedy, the reason why it's hashtag as comedy is because we're laughing at retards, which is funny to do because we laugh at people like Tomwin all the time. As a response to the other points that you made, we can have this thing existing at the same time. Yeah, that's kind of the point of contention. You just repeated yourself 20 billion, thousand, billion, fucking thousand, fucking blah, 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 blah times. My nigga, you didn't actually justify anything that you said. Can we conclude, please? Like, this is so dumb. Also, by the way, one more point, nigga. It's a disease called, I don't know how to pronounce it, aphantasia, that doesn't allow you to mentally depict what we're trying to do or the performance that you're trying to actualize. But it's the case that you can still actualize and speak of things, like simple as that. So it's the case that you're either conceiving of the notion, which I don't grant that it's easy to conceive of the analytical criteria in its entirety. I believe that you can obviously can conceive of specific components of the analytical criteria or specific features of the analytical criteria, but it's probably very difficult to conceive of the analytical criteria itself rather than just the mental image or depiction of what we're talking about, which that disease or mental deficiency is something in which this allows you from conceiving of that mental picture in which we're talking about. Let's conclude, man.
Okay. First of all, am I unmuted? I'm gonna dismiss your dismissal. That you
What?
dismiss. I'm dismissing your dismissal.
Oh wait, just
Just
to
so you
clarify, wait,
can't.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm glad you have your time, but when I say, bro, like this point isn't to say like sneak in that everything that I say is true and that you're
I'm
saying. You want to
dismissing
just
your
drop that?
dismissal.
Okay. Do you want to drop the everything? Like, I'm not trying to say, bro. I'm not trying to say that
All
in a
right,
very strange
I get what
sense.
you're saying, but I'm dismissing your
Okay,
dismissal.
okay, but I don't grant that you. Okay, go ahead, bro. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, just talking about what we're going over. I don't see the citation, so like you didn't send the citation. I couldn't find it in the video. You still haven't satisfied your burden of proof. Laughing at retards would only indicate that it doesn't take itself seriously. If this is supposed to seriously convey the fact that they have this sort of idea about the people, I guess it would just it wouldn't prove, but it would just raise likelihood to the idea that they're not taking themselves also seriously. This is just completely improper etiquette when we talk about scientific papers and hypotheses that medical professionals typically try and prove through the scientific method. Uh, this is just lack of procedure completely. You can conceive this thing, but you can't picture it. That's what aphantasia is. I noticed the sneak in. I don't agree with whatever you said. If this person really just has aphantasia, it wouldn't be indicative of them being some brain dead person. It's just you misunderstanding this point completely. This what it is just them not being able to image this, have a direct image in this thing. They can still conceptualize it, and they can still enact or act upon their conceptualizations, which is completely fine in this case. Again, you're saying I don't have any proof for anything I said. I'm completely dismissing that. You're just trying to say it. That's fine. I proved it relevantly through the denotation and the context and just like the evidence and just prove that there's a very clear explanatory gap within our two interpretations of what exactly Luffy's abilities would encompass. And you can just end this here. Like we can conclude. I'm completely fine
Hell
with
no.
concluding right
So
here.
one, I'm dismissing your dismissal of my dismissal, so I don't really care about that point. In response to the other points, I don't care if you see them. It's within the fucking video. It says that, for example, it appeals to science of NASA. So it says that the spatial organization is something which talks about the brain dead people. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that mental deficiencies is what we talk about when we're talking about brain dead people. Brain dead people don't all have the same symptoms or the same issues. It's the case that being brain dead just means that you have a high level of mental deficiencies, which within this instance, you did not respond to the mental deficiency that I'm talking about or commenting on. So that's kind of irrelevant. Now, whenever you say that it's improper when it comes to scientific research, I want you to justify that what I'm talking about is improper when it comes to just scientific research. Another thing is when it comes to the Luffy situation, I'm not trying to say that these are the only antecedents which can lead to the fact that you can verbally announce something but not conceive of it. I'm just giving examples within reality. I don't believe that the circumstance is relevant. I'm just giving examples within reality to justify that it's possible. But independent of the empirical evidence is also a priori justifiable. And I gave the justification for that. He didn't respond to the instinct point. So it's the case that yes, you could have subconscious I apologize. You can have subconscious beliefs or desires in which you instinctively act on independent of your conceivable notion, which your conceivable notion is going to be conscious. Yes, you can only conceive of things in which you're conscious of. Yeah, I believe that your conceivability is based upon your cognitive ability, which is going to be related to your conscious, your limited knowledge, and then also your imagination. That's what conceivability is talking about. So that's nothing at all when it comes to the subconscious. You're not conceiving of these subconscious desires because they happen intrinsically. They already occur. They're not extrinsic. You don't model your conceivable. You typically model your conceivability off of things that you learn within the world or experience within the world. But yeah, can we conclude? Like, like what? I'm gonna send this game by the way. You, you didn't engage in the mental deficiency point. Can we conclude? Hello.
Yeah, that's completely fine. Again, I don't really care about like whatever yeah, no,
What?
I understand it. Uh, so basically, within that case of mental deficiency, you're able to still conceptualize this thing. We can even say that Luffy has an emphantasia. I don't care, like not being able
Well, I'm
to
not saying
picture
that,
this
bro.
thing. I don't care about you not being able to picture this thing as you not being able to conceive this thing. And also, it seems to be the case that within these scenarios, that it's actually just a lack of having this thing that would fuel this. Not more so as them like actually being able to do this. Like for example, I can usually picture an apple, but then I can make myself like not picture an apple, or I can talk about like an apple. Without like actually like wanting to talk about it or like having the intent to talk about it, like there's just like some cognitive dissonance going on here uh, within that instance, right? And then also it's not going to be some separate then it's not just going to be some separate thing. uh, so another thing is usually these types of conceivabilities, these subconscious conceivabilities, if I were to grant this, would just be some extreme methods, which would also just make your point less parsimonious, because you'd be presupposing that Luffy would have the means to actually enact these techniques. It would just be much more parsimonious to just say, yes, like your conscience and your desires are in line here, and Luffy isn't just like some crazy person or like mentally deficient. All these instances that you were bringing up are just like socially secluding Luffy's either one, socially secluding Luffy's cognitive state, or two, adding more assumptions and presupposing that he would for some reason talk about something that's not in line with his desires or have some sort of cognitive dissonance. You need to give some sort of narrative argument for that, or just like some sort of argument that is within Luffy's nature. uh, I just don't see the credence for this. I just don't see the likelihood. It's just going to follow that if you talk about something, you're probably going to want to enact, or you're probably going to be thinking about something, and then also like on top of that, you just didn't engage with the fact that I don't see why that would even be a trigger. So we are done. We can conclude on this. I'm completely
Nope.
fine with
Okay.
concluding here.
So one, the Apple shit doesn't respond to anything. I'm not gonna repeat my point because I'm not gonna help you, nigga. You just didn't track that at all. As a second thing, whenever you say it's extreme, I don't grant it's extreme to act off of instinct, which is obviously gonna be correlated to your subconscious desires. So I don't grant that it's extreme. You have to justify that. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that even if I apologize. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that you have to justify, and you're on the affirmative that he was thinking of what he was speaking of. So it's the case that you have to justify he was consciously encapsulating what came out verbally speaking. You have to justify that claim, my nigga. I don't care if you make the claim that's ontologically less parsimonious on my side. You have no justification for that, my nigga. The number of assumptions that you gave is equal to the number of assumptions that I gave within that specific instance, even though I don't really believe it's an assumption, but either way. Anyways, in response to the other thing, I don't need to give a narrative argument, and you clarified that. I don't need to give an argument for that specific point at all, even though I did give priors, they give evidence. It's the case that it's actually the case that we most likely act off of instinct more than we act off of conscious desires. For example, there are particles within our body in which acts off of subconscious desires or instinct because we know that these independent accidentals that it applies to our body, like our cells, for example, don't have a consciousness. However, they still do things or have performances in which allows them to live off of instinct, like for example, feeding or combining with other cells to protect themselves or attacking other cells to protect themselves, independent of some consciousness in which they independently possess. It's the case that they're able to make instinctful actions, my nigga. So it's the case that obviously instinct, one, is most likely something in which occurs more than conscious actions. And the two, even if it's the case that it's not more likely something in which occurs more than conscious actions, the likelihood scale may be irrelevant to the point, at least in the gap, it may be irrelevant to the point in which there's no reason to bring it up. So would you like to conclude? And also consciousness and desires are independent, by the way. You just I don't know where you said that. Typically speaking, you could just model your, or but just not typically. They're independent. You could just model your conscious notions of or off of your desires that you
Can I
possess.
go? What is going on? What is
It's
going on? What is it?
conceivability. We're
Whoa,
talking about
whoa, whoa. I'm
conceivability, not
disregarding that
conscious.
because you infringed on my time. You have
But
2 minutes.
the
I got it.
point wasn't my time wasn't over. You talking about?
Wah. Was this
So you
time
can't
over?
dismiss that.
Moderation.
Shit, I don't know, but shit, I'm gonna
What?
meet him right now, and you can go. Let's get it.
All right, I'm dismissing that because he was talking for more than 2 minutes. Anyway, you got to start getting on track with this because we've just
Hey,
like
I was
been
gone for
focusing.
1 minute. Listen, I was gone for 1 minute. Let's get it. Let's get it. Come on, come on.
All right, bro, you gonna lock in?
Let's go, bro. Your time's
All right,
clocking,
bro,
bro.
my
Your
bad. All right,
time's
starting now, starting now.
ticking. Come on.
My bad, bro. My bad. My bad. My
Let's
bad.
go.
All right, listen. Again, it's not acting upon some instinct. You'd have to justify it. Uh, Basically, also to speak, it's just like to express your thoughts and feelings. So obviously, he would be acting upon his thoughts and feelings in this instant through like these articulate sounds. It literally just would be just denotatively speaking by him acting upon or making this speech. It would be like coherent for him to also for this to be in line with his thoughts or feelings. Thoughts and feelings in this instance would be synonymous to desires. Uh, Also, on top of that, uh, again, you say that it explains the same things. I don't think it explains for the same things. I don't think it accounts for the same data. These are just things that like I'm in complete disagreement with. I already explained how, for one, it would not only is it like much more complex through the means that I provided and how it like requires some sort of deficiencies or like presupposes some sort of thing, but I'm not going to help you. I've been helping you a lot. I've been holding your hand with the tracking stick, but it's okay, I don't have to. All right, I'm sorry, bro, that was dickheadish. uh Anyway, I'd like to. You made a claim. I'd like to see some sort of justification for these subconscious particles and how we act upon them more frequently than these conscious particles. And then on top of that, it presupposes that these subconscious particles can't be overridden by these conscious particles that would be produced through the speech. And you need to prove all that. And then after that, we can conclude. Do you want to conclude? Let's conclude.
All right, let me unmute Infinity.
No,
Let me ask him.
the capacity to be overridden is not going to be something which is relevant to whether or not we act off of our instinct more than us acting off of our conscious desires or our conceivable notions, which are distinct, by the way. What I said, what that he tried to dismiss, which I don't agree that he can dismiss, but even he does dismiss, I'm just going to repeat it. Conceivability is independent of desires. Conceivability is independent of desires. We can model our conceivability off of our desires, but those two things are independent of each other. In response to the other point, whenever it says thoughts within the scan or within the denotation, you can categorize thoughts as subconscious or conscious. So that doesn't actually add to anything because we're talking about whether or not within this instance it was a subconscious verbal speech or it was a conscious verbal speech when it comes to his performance, conceivability, and actual deliberation in terms of the announcement. In response to the other thing, when it says to the end, I'm not sure as to why, and I want you to justify this as to why the end is something which is not just an inclusive disjunction rather than it being a concrete conjunction. And then when you say it's more complex, I didn't see the argument for that. I need justification for that. And then I also gave rationale for my overall point. And by the way, whenever you try to make the claim that it's humorous, therefore obviously it's taken away from the seriousness, you can engage in humor but also be serious. And I'm just gonna repeat this point, even though I made this claim before. It can be serious and something which provides humor because a lot of times people use humor within specific situations to mask the pain that they're feeling or the seriousness of the situation, even though it's still serious, ultimately speaking. Like I don't need to justify that. You saying I didn't fulfill my burden is something irrelevant, my nigga. I already gave evidence. I don't need to fulfill the burden in that specific way that you're talking about. And then also the justification for the accidentals, I gave rationale as to why the accidentals act in this specific way. But even independent of the rationale, I need to justify that because that's not the only claim I made.
Okay, time is up. Westbound, you're muted.
Okay, so I justified it with my intuition, i.e., rationale. Yeah, you can rationalize this thing. Doesn't mean I have to accept it. Anyway, if you don't think that Luffy models his conceivability off of his desires, right now this is just you being like completely incoherent. Not incoherent, like that's obviously something coherent to say. You can model your conceivability off your desires, but it would just not be coherent with what the scan says and what you've been arguing for, right? If he doesn't model his conceivability off of his desires, then if he desires to kill Kaido in this instance, he wouldn't model his conceivability off of that. So within this fight, do you see how that would just like completely defeat your argument? Also, even then, let's say like this isn't something like you can remedy this through some sort of rationale. Even then, he like the ability is just described to turn his imagination into reality. Uh, Well, I mean, I guess that would go hand in hand with conceivability, but then we can see his desires within the scans quoted. So he's basically like saying, "Oh, this is so much fun, Kaido." So this is basically just supposed to lend credence to the idea that there is this connection between desires to conceivability to reality in this instance, and then obviously we're questioning whether or not that means like some relevant thing in terms of it being subjective reality made up. And then on top of that, you said, "Oh, I don't see why this thing has to be the case." I don't care if you didn't see it. I already made the argument, so I'm sorry you didn't track it. Uh, and also, yeah, sure, that's fine. You can make light of the situation, but that doesn't mean it's proper etiquette within the scientific world. I asked for justification, like some sort of justification, like the empiric. Again, just for the recording, I asked for empirics. He didn't provide them. So, uh, again, if you want to analyze something objectively, this having fun thing or like trying to make light of it would be including some sort of subjectivity that would.
All right, time's up. I'm meaning. There you go,
Whenever
Infinity.
whenever you said you asked for the empirical evidence, I already responded to the synthetic justification, which was promoted. So I did promote some synthetic. Please mute your mic, bro. I did promote some synthetic justification, but even independent of that, the rationale that I gave is something which is relevant. The rationale is independent of the intuition. So you saying that I can justify intuitively, therefore it's rationale or rational doesn't mean that that's what I'm doing. That's not what I did. So whenever you put into question the rationale or you dismiss the rationale, I don't grant that you can do that. You need to justify that it's a basis, reasonably speaking, to question the rationale and to dismiss it. Anyways, when it comes to the conceivability of desires, the entire point is that within this instance, I don't grant that he's conceiving of the desire in which may be something in which he possesses. That's the entire point, dumbass. So whether or not he typically models his conceivability off of desires that he has is something which I grant. And I said that at the start of the debate, you have to fucking track. Within this instance, whether or not he's doing that is the point of contention, considering how hard it is to analytically conceive of things. Now, in response to everything else, I already said that thoughts can be categorized as subconscious or conscious. When it comes to the inclusive, you didn't respond to that. I agree that there's a connection. I just don't believe that there's an identity relationship. I believe that there is a connective relationship, which is distinct. The exhaustion point is going to be correlated to the imagination shit. So I already talked about the exhaustion and the killing intent point. And then whenever you say it's not coherent with the scan, I need you to justify that. And whenever you say that my point isn't collaborated with by scientific innovations, I need you to justify that. Like, I don't give a fuck about the improper etiquette. Like, you can't explain why that's something which is relevant within this specific instance. You can't explain why that's something which is true within this specific instance. Can we please conclude? Like, we've been talking about this multiple times. Also, another point of justification for the intrinsic point is going to be babies, for example. Babies subconsciously desire things and they show these desires through their speech, like wow when they're in pain, or that's why they do the test to see if the baby's retarded or if there's something wrong with the baby when they come into existence or coming from the fucking womb. They hit them with a fucking stick on their knee to make sure that they're crying as a reaction to pain because you're able to act off of this intrinsic feeling that you possess. You're able to act off of instinct, my nigga. They
All right, time's up. There you go, Westbound.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, you just completely counter and you counterfactually just like debunked your claim. So yeah, if he typically does this thing, then we can build this inductive case that he would model it off of his desires in this instance. You simply questioning it wouldn't be like an adequate defeater. This would just be another thing on top of the preponderance of evidence that I've used to try and build some sort of likelihood. For this also being the case here. So not only do we know that he typically has this relationship, but then there are also things within the scan that would model this relationship. Anyway, again, I need you to justify the connection relationship. I already justified how it was incoherent with the scan, and then also the proper etiquette thing would be extremely relevant because we're questioning whether or not this thing would be like it being like comedy or not, or it being hashtagged as comedy or something that would be purely laughed at, would be something that we value. Uh, in terms of like determining whether or not something takes itself seriously or should be taken seriously as some sort of scientific entry. And then also, yeah, these babies can conceive their desires. They feel like crying, so they conceive or, in this instance, act upon that desire to cry. It seems to be the case that even like subconsciously speaking, that these desires are something that you would act upon, or even like consciously speaking, these desires would be something that's acted upon. You can go ahead. We can conclude.
We're not concluding. So the will to live is something which is intrinsic, meaning that you need to justify that at the time where the babies are making these reactions, it's the case that their mental capacity allows for conceivability in the first place. That's why I bring up the example. If it's the case that they cannot mentally conceive of these things, however, they still provide reactions off of the intrinsic features in which they're expressing or attempting to express, it's the case that you could obviously give speech patterns or you can obviously give vocal deliberations, quote unquote, or make attempts independent of the conceivability that you have. Also, you have to track dumbass. I'm sorry, that was very mean. It's the case that within the scan, I'm arguing conceivability not being identical to desires because where the point of contention is whether or not it's a subconscious desire or desire. I can grant that your conceivability is typically modeled off of your conscious desires, but I don't grant whether or not it's modeled off of your subconscious desires. Well, so within this instance, if it's a subconscious desire, then it obviously follows that the conceivability wouldn't be modeled off of that, which is the entire point of fucking contention. Whenever you say that, I apologize. Whenever I said it wasn't relevant or I don't grant it being relevant, that's talking about its truth validity. So if it's something which is not true, obviously it's not going to be relevant. You didn't justify that the scientific proper etiquette is something which is justified within a specific instance. It's the case that just because we don't value what they're doing or whether or not we take it to be a valid method to cope with the seriousness of the situation, just because we don't accept that doesn't mean that they don't accept that. And this point, like this point is obviously fucking troll. Like, why are we still on this shit, bro? Like, can we please conclude? By the way, you're the one who said it was connected. I'm saying that they're not identical. Which you made the claim that they're not. Are you granted that it's typical for them to lead into each other? But I'm fine with that. That's why I'm saying they're connected, but they're not identical. Identical. There's no identity relationship. So I don't know why you told me to justify that they're connected. Like, you know that you didn't know what the fuck you're talking about.
All right, time's up. To our debate, let's conclude, please. There you go, Westbound, you're free.
Okay. Well, obviously, I asked you because I didn't know exactly what you meant by that. I assumed you meant something else. If you're just saying what I said, I don't care. I'm not saying it's some identical relationship. You just wanted to do some like big philosophical grandstanding. Okay, it was. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Like, come on. Anyway, uh, yeah. Clearly, it's not subconscious desire or like you're quoting that this trigger is like some. You're not even quoting that this trigger is some subconscious desire. You're saying that the what would actually be acted upon here is like his conceivability, right? If you're saying that his conceivability wouldn't be off of like some subconscious desire rather than conscious desire, then it would just be like some self-defeating point. I agree. The last point was troll. We can just move on. You didn't win that though. But regardless, I don't think you understand right now. Like you aren't helping yourself. We can entirely conclude this debate right here. It's gotten way too long. It's been a good debate back and forth, but regardless, it's gone on for too long. Can we just please conclude?
Yes, I agree. Let's conclude. You're
I
both
want you to
unmuted
give
now.
evidence. Hold on. I want you to give evidence as to why subconscious desires are something which is included in the category of conceivabilities. Because if it's the case that within a specific instance, it follows that there's no real asymmetrical complexity between the fact that subconscious desires are being applied in comparison to conscious desires, then it follows that we cannot use your scan, even though you're on the affirmative, talking about that it would be a conscious desire in which he models his conceivability off of. That isn't actualized, obviously, because he loses the battle, quote unquote, which obviously happens to do the stamina issues, what I just said. So it's the case that nothing that you said actually justifies anything. The reason why I bring up the identity point is not to philosophically cliff you because you don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, that was mean. But rather because my point is contingent upon whether or not, at least that specific point is contingent upon whether or not conceivability is identical to desires, or if it's the case that you can just model your conceivability or what you're conceiving off of desires and what you possess, consciously speaking, conscious desires. I don't grant that subconsciousness is a part of that. Now, I did win that point, by the way. Can we conclude?
All right, nice conclusions. Go ahead, Westbound.
No, that was not my conclusion. Can we
Yeah,
conclude though?
yeah, that was your conclusion.
Yeah,
We're done
stop
with
talking
this
so
debate.
much
We're
then,
Hey,
my
done.
nigga.
can y'all chill? Can we conclude Westbound? Yes or no?
All
Hello?
right, bro. You know what? I'm not. I just want to put this shit to bed. Like this is just
Okay, you
taking
agree
way
to
too long.
conclude?
Yo, let's
Oh my
conclude,
god!
guys. It's
All
been
right,
2
fine. Hold
You
hours.
on.
Come
Wait.
on.
I'm gonna say one more thing.
Oh my God. Yo, oh my
You
God.
did
Yo,
the
Westbound,
one
bro,
point
if you do
prolonging
that, if you say
thing.
one more thing and Fenn's gonna say one more thing, then you're gonna say one more thing,
I
and
need
it's
to
gonna
say,
go on
bro.
for
I
another
need
He
to say
said
a
hour.
one more
responsive. Like, what
thing,
are we
bro. He
talking
just said
about?
something new.
Go, bro. I didn't say anything new, by the way. Okay. But go ahead.
Tensei, by the way, you're absolutely shit. You lost to Darn.
He
Okay,
You
lost
no,
to
no,
me,
All
chill,
right,
chill.
bitch.
chill.
No,
No,
bro,
that's
chill.
not true either way. That's not true.
Chill, bro. Chill.
He
Y'all can't
lost
be
to me,
having, bro.
every
bitch.
Can
discussion
we
you had with
conclude, bro? Can we
every
conclude?
discussion you've had with
You
Zizo,
lost to
you
me,
made
bitch.
yourself
You don't
look
even
like
know
an
what you
absolute
said.
idiot. You
And
lost by
we
a high margin.
conclude, bro.
Let's can
Chill,
debate
bro.
And
after. Come on,
you
Oh,
made yourself
bro.
look like an absolute idiot.
bro.
Okay,
Okay,
chill, bro.
Westbound,
Okay,
bro.
bro.
Come
so
on.
gives
Bro, can we
props to Sadie's
conclude?
and
Can we
Zizo.
conclude?
You
Can we
fucking suck
conclude?
dick.
Stop, bro. Can we conclude?
I'm sorry, Tensei, you're low tier. Anyway, Yeah, anyway, regardless, the point is here that these are all conscious desires. He's like representing this conscious
What?
desire. Like he's saying, yes,
What?
leave. I want to help you. I want to do this thing. If you're literally agreeing that this trigger is some conscious desire, that's fine. Then yes, we don't disagree here. I think like you might have just not tracked, or maybe I didn't track. Maybe somebody didn't track here. But I'm gonna be so honest, Infinity. Like I don't think you understand. If you're agreeing that this is some sort of conscious conceivability thing, and he is like acting within his conscious desires that he's representing through his speech, that's fine. We can absolutely conclude you're only helping me right now. That's fine. I don't care. I don't care.
You're not understanding. What I'm claiming is that they're relativistically temporal facts, or they can be relativistically temporal facts. What that means to say is that prior to his Gear 5 entrance, it could be the case that when he's running alongside Vegapunk, he does have the conscious desire, therefore the conceivable notion to protect him in the specific way that you're talking about, in a specific way
We
in
can
which is not
conclude.
just talking
Do
about, let me
wait.
finish
Do
what I
you
was
want to
saying.
conclude?
Bro, mute him, in a specific way in which just isn't talking about stalling. However, when it comes to the battle, it's the case that he isn't thinking of that specific conceivable notion, which obviously there's context as to why he isn't thinking that, he doesn't have killing intent, etc. He isn't thinking about that specific conceivable notion, but rather protecting him through a way of stalling, which I don't even grant that he's thinking of that, but he's just making a claim in which may not be connected to his conscious action, or I apologize, conscious desires, but rather his subconscious desires. So whenever you say it's not helping you, or I apologize, it's not helping me, that obviously goes circular because it is. If it's relativistically temporal when it comes to it being factual or corresponding to reality, then it's the case that within this instance, even though he's giving some vocal deliberation of what he's talking about, some verbal deliberation of what he's talking about, it is not announced your point being true. So can we conclude, my nigga? Like, bro.
All right, listen. I don't care if
Oh
it's
my
like
god.
some. What do you mean? Don't say, "Oh my god!" Like, bro, I gave you a very simple thing to conclude on. You don't want to conclude on it. That's your fault. Um. Anyway, I don't care if it's this atemporal thing. You are literally just repeating what you said prior. Yes, this is completely fine. If Luffy before the fight had this sort of desire, and then during the fight he can have like some sort of different desire. But regardless, if we've established that more, we have credences suggesting that one, that Luffy thinks these things, or that Luffy can have multiple desires. That two, Luffy can act upon or call out his desires, or like these are like conscious desires that he's conceiving of. Three, you don't understand that your entire argument right now is that subconsciously, Luffy would have a different directive, and if you're agreeing that consciously he would have another directive, and we're going off of the conscious directive, then what do you think is being argued for here, or what do you think is being proved here, Infinity?
I already gave, by the way, I'm going to answer the question when it's my turn to speak. So is he done speaking? I'm going to assume that he is done speaking because he's not interrupting me. So mute him, please. So it's the case that I already give the answer. I'm going to repeat it during conclusions because I'm not going to help you and help you track because you lost the tendency. I'm sorry, that was very mean. I just want to be rhetorical. It's the case that as a response to the other point, I don't grant that the educational system that you talked about is going to be something which is actually warranting of the claim that you made originally speaking. It's the case that people use humor to educate people all the time. So it's the case that humor can mask whatever they're fucking talking about, especially for autistic people. In response to the other points, it follows that you didn't give any actual credences, my nigga. And then when it comes to conceiving of the specific instance, if it's relativistically temporal, when it comes to accurately depicting what's going on within reality, then the instance that you're talking about isn't justification as to why the conceivable notion is something that which is off of his consciousness rather than the subconsciousness. And it follows that obviously if it's off his subconsciousness, then him not actualizing the goal, which he did actualize that specific goal, is going to be something which is relevant. So it's the case that nothing that you said actually justifies your point. It follows that the context in which is surrounding all the instances within the battles that he had within One Piece is something independent of the hypothetical verse, and we can conclude, my nigga. You didn't justify anything. I never said it was atemporal, by the way. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Atemporal means it exists outside of fucking time. It's unbound by time. I said it's relativistically temporal when it comes to accurately depicting
Prove
what's the
that.
case of reality. Let me finish what I was saying. Prove what? You can say that at the end. I'm dismissing that burden. So it's the case. Please add 5 seconds to my point because he interrupted me. It's the case that it's relativistically temporal if it accurately depicts events that are happening at a specific moment in time. Like, for example, if I'm walking, I can make the claim that my leg is in front of my right leg, my left leg is in front of my right leg. That will only be true for like 1 second because my right leg is obviously going to translate to being in front of my left leg after that, meaning that the claim that I made about my left leg being in front is only relativistically temporally true within that specific instance.
Please meet him. I'm not gonna lie, bro. Prove that. All right, we can conclude.
What do you want me to prove?
It's unbound by time.
No, oh my, are you? I'm saying atemporality is simply defined as being transcendental of time in a way in which allows you to be unbound by time. That's just the way that the word is defined. That's
Okay, so prove
analytically
it's
true.
atemporal.
I never said that the situations. Yeah, well, let's conclude. You are autistic. I'm sorry. Like,
Bro,
can we
you
conclude?
were talking. I'm not gonna lie,
Let's
Infinity.
conclude. Let's
Bro,
conclude. Like, no, this two. I told you that I was gonna talk fast with this 2 minute shit. Like, this 2 minute timer is so retarded. Like,
no,
can we
bro. No,
conclude?
wait. Wallahi, Infinity. You are a sneaky, greedy guy, bro.
Ow.
We agreed before. We said, all right, 2 minutes. And then you said, oh, I thought it was gonna be 3 minutes. You lied, bro. I could get
Wait, what?
Yanni
What do
to
you mean?
vouch, bro.
No, I
I
thought. No,
could
I
put
did.
Yanni.
No. Well, I did think it was gonna be 3 minutes because I have a bad memory. I'm not saying that you
You
lied or
did
something
not
like
think
that.
it. All right, bro.
No,
Whatever.
no,
Wallahi,
dead ass
Yanni was
though. No,
there, and we
it
said
doesn't
two
matter.
minutes, and you said,
I agree. I misremembered. I'm not saying that I'm
all
like.
right, bro.
I'm
All
not.
right, bro. Listen,
Like, but yeah,
listen.
we could conclude. Like, you, bro, come
All
on,
right,
bro.
we
You
can.
can. You can
I'm not gonna give
in
any.
conclusion.
Listen. Let me
Okay,
tell
I'm
you
gonna give a
something.
conclusion for the recording real quick. So for
All
the
right, bro.
recording,
Give
he
a
didn't respond.
conclusion for the recording. This
Yeah,
guy
I'm
lost.
sorry. He just didn't respond at all. Between the, there's a lot of points I would like to talk about, but there's primary points, I guess. So when it comes to the context not surrounding the hypothetical battle, was the case that I did not grant at all that he had clean consent against anybody that he fought. So it's the case that the way that he acted is going to be distinct from the way that he acted within the battles within the fucking verse. Secondly speaking, plot induced stupidity, he literally just did not respond to at all. So all the instances that he brung up could just be something which is induced by plot induced stupidity or something which is relevant to plot induced stupidity, which is obviously going to seem like there's a contradiction. However, I know Hermes. He might respond after, but I'm going to end the recording because he agreed that he wasn't going to conclude. Anyways, it's the case that plot induced stupidity may be something which accounts for all the situations that you brung up, which you didn't respond to that point at all. Thoroughly speaking, it's the case that your interpretation that you gave towards all the or all the points is something which was never justified, while my interpretation was more parsimonious due to the asymmetrical complexity between the two propositions or the two explanations given the hypothesis we're talking about or the situation we're talking about. And then he tried to bring up some retarded ontological parsimonious point when it comes to the analogy, even though the analogy didn't give a proper view of what ontological parsimony is talking about. It's not talking about an explanation that accounts for all the data. So obviously, if it's the case that the complexity allows for it to account for all data, that's going to be a different topic of conversation. But that's this analogous to what we're talking about, as well as within the instance where I said if he's pushed into a corner, he's obviously going to exhaust all his features within the battle, which includes the thought of winning. So if he needs to win immediately, and that's because he's pushed into a corner, it's going to be the case that he exhausts that feature within the battle because that would be one of his features. I said when you're pushed against a corner, you're going to exhaust all the features of which you possess to win, which means that within his mind, it's the case that independent of this euphoric state, because it's not his first time achieving it within a hypothetical battle, independent of his goal to stall against the opponent because he actually has killing intent within this specific hypothetical battle, it's the case that he has these features in which allows him to win. And then finally speaking, whenever he says, oh, well, could you be talking about him having some idea and he performs the idea, which everybody can do, granted your reality manipulation point. And the entire point is that obviously the subjective reality they promote for Luffy is going to be something which is independent of the reality manipulation that everybody has, because reality manipulation that everybody has is just manipulating some state of affairs within reality because we're able to move, for example. We're able to change the location of tables, chairs, and other objects, meaning that we're able to manipulate states of affairs within reality. That's just trivially true. However, it's the case that one, if that were what they were talking about would be something relation, and then two, it's the case that subjective reality means reality subject to the mind. Us performing things within or us performing things that are modeled within our mind, or us having performances in which are modeled off of ideas that we have in our mind, does not mean that reality is subject to the mind. Subject to the mind means that our mind is what depicts reality being true or controls reality being true. It's the case that there's a correlation, which is the point that I made that he never responded to. There's listen to this, Westbound. There's a correlation between our desires, typically speaking, and then the actions we perform, because we can perform things in terms of a model of our desires. But that's not the
Oh my god, I
causation.
did
Because,
respond.
bro, let me respond, bro. Chill. Damn, nigga. Anyways,
My
it's
bad.
the case that isn't the causation. That doesn't grant power. That doesn't grant actual power for the desires, because it's the case that even independent of our desires, we're able to perform actions. But it's just typically speaking, there's a difference between performing actions in which are modeled off of ideas within your mind, while the actions are naturalistically limited in comparison to performing actions off of what's in your mind, solely with the limitation of the imagination without these naturalistic limitations, which is the point that he never responded to at all. So granted all this, he now also didn't respond to how the diction is something of which is very specific when it comes to describing his ability, and consistently within One Piece, this is an abductive and inductive point that I made, consistently in One Piece, when they talk
Yeah.
about the description of the devil, let me finish. Consistently within One Piece, when they give descriptions of devil fruits, they actually depict what the devil fruit is exactly able to do, precisely able to do. And I justify that it's talking about his imagination
Right.
being able to turn. Bro, chill. It's obviously talking about his imagination being able to be brought into reality, because the scan that I sent, secondly speaking, which he did not respond to at all for some reason, my nigga, and I said it like 30 times, it says in combat, they're supposedly only limited by their imagination. That was supposed to justify that with the correlation point, they're not only limited by their imagination, because if they're just looking into the mind and then seeing that there's something in which, like, for example, going to the store, it's the case that they can model their performance off of going to the store, but they're still limited to the physical, naturalistic laws of the world. Meaning that if, for example, they in their mind have the idea to fly to the store due to natural naturalistic laws, there's some incompatibility between them metaphysically fly. I apologize. There's some naturalistic incompatibility and metaphysical incompatibility between them flying to the store. I apologize. Anyways, some metaphysical incompatibility between them flying to the store and not flying to the store. Obviously, they have features in which does not grant that thing being compatible with reality. So it's the case that they're limited by the naturalistic laws or the metaphysical laws, both of them. While independent of that, if it's causation and it's only off of the imagination, that means that they're not limited by these naturalistic laws because it says supposedly their only limitation is imagination. If that's their only limitation, then the correlation has multiple limitations. It has naturalistic laws, metaphysical laws, etc. While this specific limitation is only talking about his imagination, which is independent of naturalistic laws, which is the credence that I gave that he never responded to at all. He never talked about the induction point that I gave. He never talked about anything at all. And he also didn't justify.
Literally.
Do you feel happy that you did that?
Yo, Infinity, he wasn't
Hey, I'll
updating, bro.
do. Hey,
Updating.
Infinity, when you go